on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Six o'clock, Wednesday, the 7th of February. You're very welcome to breakfast here in GB News, served up by me, Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
A swift exit from the King after a 45-minute meeting with Prince Harry. So, is a royal reconciliation still possible?
The government's biggest white elephant, HS2, set to haunt the Prime Minister again today.
Yes, I'm Catherine Forster, political correspondent here in Westminster. If the Prime Minister thought that stopping HS2 at Birmingham was going to be the end of his HS2 headaches, he was very much mistaken. I'll bring you the details shortly.
Heavy snow for many parts of the country as temperatures set to drop over the next couple of days.
A chilly but bright day for many of us today before some significant snow across the central third of the UK. Tomorrow, more details in the weather forecast coming up soon.
Also coming up, as the best and worst degrees for earning a high salary are revealed, we'll be debating whether it's time to ban Mickey Mouse degrees.
And in sport, it's FA Cup fourth round replay week. Old Trafford could become the Wembley of the North, and Andy Murray loses again.
We want to hear from you this morning about this story. Prince Harry, just 45 minutes with his father, travelled through the night from the other side of the world, hasn't seen his dad in a really long time. His father's unwell, and he is seen driving into Current's house, and 45 minutes later his father leaves. Now, everything is thought through in the royal household. They think about optics all the time. To me, as a parent, or even as a child, I would think, as soon as the son's arrived, he can't get away fast enough. It just feels like there's still tension there. What do you think? Would you leave as soon as your son arrived in those circumstances?
Hello, Harry. Come in from LA. Right, very good. Is anything important, anything I can do for you? Where are my car keys? Who's got my bag?
Where's my pen?
Out the door. Boom. Away they go. It does sound very brief and very impersonal, the whole thing, but there we go. What do you make of this? Prince Harry, that's the King's helicopter there you're seeing taking off for Sandringham. And so what actually went on? That is the
what
question.
We're getting to the bottom of.
So the pair
all
believed to have spoken, as we say. Harry arrives at 2:45. The King leaves in his car 3:38 and heads to Sandringham.
Well, it's unknown how long Prince Harry is going to stay in the UK or if he will indeed see the King again. And according to royal sources, he has absolutely no plans to meet with his estranged brother.
Joined us now in studio, we're delighted to say good morning to royal correspondent Richard Fitzwilliams. Good to see you, Richard. You'll end up talking to us longer than Charles and Harry seem to have spoken yesterday. We were quite taken aback by the brevity of the meeting. Are you?
I think to some extent. I mean, I think there are two sides here. It's a very, very sensitive time, as we all know. And Prince Harry is aware of the cancer diagnosis, which has not been shared with us in detail. there's, on the one hand, there are those who would say this is a loving son making a gesture, and whether you want to read reconciliation into that at the moment is one thing, but on the other hand, that he came immediately, he's been seen, King Charles had begun treatment and was very tired, and that was the reason for the brevity of it. There are the others who will look at what happened and say that the optics are particularly bad because the royal family will not have forgotten the fact that Prince Philip, when Harry and Meghan did their extremely damaging Oprah interview, this was like some form of nuclear bomb aimed at the palace, was in fact in hospital, and as we know, very sadly, this was proved his final illness. And also, the way the Sussexes have attacked the royal family ceaselessly and for monetary gain since has been very, very damaging. So this is a hypersensitive moment. I mean, my own feeling is that the only thing that makes sense when there is a diagnosis of a life-threatening illness, which millions know that cancer is, though we are heartened by the Prime Minister's comment with reference to the fact that they caught this early. Well, thank heavens for that. But the problem is, obviously, if you've got stresses and strains in the family, if they are the world's most high-profile monarchy, and if they, therefore, get into the papers and are constantly discussed, I mean, this then exacerbates matters. So the only thing that makes sense at the moment is some form of cohesion. And I think Harry was very wise to come alone for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I mean, is it normal for meetings of this sort between, you know, immediate family and the royal family to be quite short? I mean, it's very possible that this is completely ordinary to the royals. It's just the fact that he left so swiftly after his son arrived. You thought somebody might have thought, oh, let's give it another hour and a half before we helicopter off to Sandringham. I mean, is that a normal length of a meeting?
It's impossible to say what a normal length of a meeting is at this particular juncture, because, as I say, it is very possible that the king could be extremely tired. If one looks at the photographs, I mean, it's obviously a brave decision to be photographed, but you can see, or I certainly read into them, that the king does look, shall we say, extremely weary. There is no doubt that a meeting has taken place, and let's hope that something can be built on that, not just looking as to the way the Sussexes behaved in the past, to the fact that we know there's a very deep rift, and the fact he isn't seeing William. Well, we have to bear in mind, of course, William has an investiture he's conducting today at Windsor, and then tomorrow there's the ambulance ball.
Tonight.
The gala.
Yeah, the gala's tonight, the same day.
In London. Well, I mean, it's very tough for him because Catherine, as we know, is recuperating after abdominal surgery. And I mean, that will continue, we are told, until after Easter. Now, with all of this, it's a very difficult time and perhaps unsurprising that the brothers aren't meeting. On the other hand, have they been in touch? We're told not for a very long time. Will they be? It's part of the process of reconciliation, if there is to be this, which is the only thing, as I say, that makes any sense at a time like this, that they do meet, but under what circumstances? I mean, William doesn't trust Harry for obvious reasons, because he's afraid that anything he says might perhaps
be reported elsewhere. I'm fascinated to know whether the Queen was at the meeting between Harry and his dad.
I'm guessing not.
I'm guessing not as well. But because he has been really mauling of her and her reputation, so it would take a lot, I suppose, to have a certain amount of rapprochement going on there.
I think that was the red line when Harry attacked Camilla. The Queen was basically, well, he said that she'd, for the sake of PR, he would be sacrificed. That is apparently what he believes. I mean, there's no doubt the rehabilitation of Camilla, as it was known over 20 years ago, was pretty ruthless. Mark Boland, who conducted it, was a tough PR. But having said that, I mean, it was a very, very unwise thing to say. And as we know, after Spare was published, Frogmore Cottage was not available.
Well, that's an interesting point. He is effectively homeless homeless in the UK. Lots of speculation about where he spent last night. Princess Beatrice also visited the King yesterday morning, and we know from the Netflix documentary, that he is close with his cousins. He could possibly have stayed with other royal relatives, or there's suggestions possibly in a luxury London hotel. But that in itself will presumably add to his feelings of, being rejected. Yeah, isolation.
Oh, he has feelings of rejection, but of course he's undergoing therapy, and there's no question that he wants an apology from the royal family. The gripes have been worldwide, and they've done a lot of damage. I mean, the Sussexes are responsible, or largely responsible, for the way the royals, but with the 18 to 24-year-old group, most of them now are in favour of a republic in some of the recent polls.
Look, end of the day, there was no reason on God's earth that Charles had to be in Sandringham by a certain time yesterday, unless darkness with the flight had something to do with it. It could well have done. Flying in the dark in a helicopter is not to be recommended.
Well, stay another night in Clarence House then.
Could be, yeah. You could do that, but it seems to be, to give, and the newspapers vary between did they meet for 30 minutes or 45 minutes? Either way, it isn't a long period of time. And why couldn't they have just said, just hold the copter for another half hour or whatever?
Absolutely.
Quite strange, since the lad came the whole way from Los Angeles. It shows how serious all this is. Richard, thanks for your take on things. We really appreciate your insight. Thank you very much indeed, Richard Fitzwilliams there, royal commentator.
Yeah, and let us know your thoughts. Would you, as Eamonn was saying, if your child has travelled through the night, would you be so swift to disappear off to your second home or third home, whatever it is? Sandringham comes in on the ranking. Send your views in, gbviews@gbnews.com.
A look at some of the other stories you're waking up to on this Wednesday morning. More precise details have been released about the last known movements of chemical attack suspect Abdul Zaidi before he went on the run. The police say Zaidi walked past the Unilever building near Blackfriars and headed towards Victoria Embankment in central London. A £20,000 reward is still being offered to anyone whose information that leads to his arrest.
A door that flew off a Boeing aircraft mid-flight last month appears to have been missing 4 major bolts, according to an initial report by a US safety board. The door blew off an Alaska Airlines plane, and new evidence from the report has found key bolts were missing from the Boeing 737 MAX 9 jet.
A man has been charged with malicious communications following reports of an abusive and threatening phone call to a Conservative MP's office. 46-year-old James Phillips has also been charged with assaulting an emergency services worker. He will appear in court today. It follows Justice Minister Mike Freer announcing his decision to quit politics as he feared for his safety. What we want to do weather-wise is just to look ahead in the next few days. Today there seemed to be a lot of rain overnight, certainly in the southeastern part of England. I don't know what it's like where you're waking up today, but a lot of surface water on the roads in the London area. And now heavy snow set to hit the country. There's been a yellow warning issued for large parts of England and Wales for Thursday into Friday.
Yeah, and the Met Office say that the winter weather could lead to possible disruption, power cuts again, and more travel delays. And the warnings will be running from 3 o'clock tomorrow morning right through to the same time on Friday morning. And the areas it affects are from Cumbria and the Scottish borders down to Cambridgeshire and the Midlands in England. OK, let's talk to Jim Dale from the British Weather Services on all of this. So it's a belt of snow we're talking about, and it's a large belt across the middle of the country going northwards.
Yeah, good morning. It is. The weather's back again, so am I. And, yeah, well, look, we're in winter time. It's nothing massively unusual. Snowing in many parts of Scotland this morning, by the way. I need to say that, because they're used to it. And they do well with it. But look, what's happening is the mild air is going to try and push back. And when it hits the cold air in situ in the overnight, that's the trouble zone. So that's central belt. So I'm going to say, actually, the North Midlands, northwards into Derbyshire, into North Wales, across into the southern Pennines, so the Greater Manchester area, especially the high. So I'll mention the M62 because I remember last year, and I was there, where this kind of event happened and they all got stuck in the overnight and spent 6-7 hours in their cars. So a very similar thing might happen tonight. I'm not saying it's going to be the M62, but that's the big motorway that goes through west to east across the Pennines.
Yeah.
And there'll be other little minor roads. So it's that kind of zone, and the snow field will move more and more northwards as you go through the day, eventually reaching southern Scotland. So as ever, when these warnings get put out, it's always worth it. It's always, you've got to always focus on these things for the right reasons, and don't be the idiot who dismisses it's just a bit of weather. I'll just go out and I'll be fine. No, because these things can be hazardous, they can be dangerous, and we got to...
It's just what I don't want to hear. I'm heading to Manchester tomorrow.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and coming back down again then on Friday. So that's not looking like a good idea.
You'll be coming back more into the rain than you will going in the other direction. So at least you're travelling when you're coming back, but going up there might be problematical depending on your timing, and it is those are the Peak District, particularly Sheffield area, these sort of areas. A little bit of and that's where you're going to get the problems. It won't last too long. That's the good thing. It will push north and it'll turn more sleety and rainy behind it. But when you're in it for like 3 and 4 hours, that's when the trouble, because the wind will be blowing as well. So, yeah, I'm going to say it's an atypical winter event. We've perhaps not got used to it, but I think over the last few years it's starting to sort of come back, isn't it? Where we've seen these events from time to time, the snow events. So, yeah, it's February. We've got another one.
I've got to ask you, Jim, whilst we've got you, do you consider yourself an environmentalist? Because you'll be aware, and lots of our viewers will have been watching PopCon yesterday, where Liz Truss called environmentalists extremists, and you had Lee Anderson as well of GB News saying that coal's a sustainable form of energy because it comes from trees.
Mad.
What did you think about
mad.
that?
Simple as that. She was a rubbish PM. She got kicked out after it. Look, I say it how it is. We all know it. And now she's out there trying to I'm quite happy to be an eco-zealot. What does that mean? I love the environment. Why not? I think most people do. So
are you an extremist?
No, I think she's the extremist. I think that group are extreme. And if you don't believe me, then maybe talk to some Conservatives that are in the middle, if you like, the wheel has been shunted to one side, because they would probably say the same. So that's where we're at. Pay no notice to Liz Truss. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever. She's outspoken and she's wrong. And I'm quite happy, as most people are, to be looking after the environment in the best way possible.
OK, had to ask. Jim Dell, thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you. OK, and let's get the weather picture for the day ahead, and here it is.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. It's a chilly start out there for many of us, but plenty of bright weather for the rest of today, although cloud and rain will linger across the far south. That will come and go, especially across parts of Devon and Cornwall through the day. It's going to be on and off rainfall. The cloud also extends up to around the M4, but north of that, actually plenty of bright spells, some patchy cloud around, and continued sleet and snow showers for the north and west of Scotland. One of the two of these getting into parts of Northern Ireland as well, but actually away from these showers, feeling perfectly pleasant with temperatures of 7 to 8 Celsius across central parts and light winds, although it will stay windy in the far north and northwest. That wind will continue to drive snow showers into northwest Scotland overnight. Meanwhile, the next bout of wet weather returns to the south and southwest. This will be falling as heavy and persistent rain for parts of South Wales and southwest England by dawn. Mild here, but cold further north, with temperatures well below freezing for parts of Scotland and northern England. And as the rain in the south moves north and bumps into the cold air, well, it's going to turn increasingly to snow, mainly across mid Wales, the Midlands northwards. Increasing, that's going to affect northern England and Northern Ireland later in the day as well. But it's certainly going to be a wintry day with that snow building up, and some significant snowfall over northern hills could cause disruption.
Well, now we will give you a bit of sunshine in the darkness here. Your chance to win £18,000, because this is the Great British Giveaway, only exclusively here on GB News.
Yeah, and not only is it £18,000, it's tax-free as well. Here are all the details you need on how to enter.
This is your chance to win £18,000 cash in our very latest Great British Giveaway. Cash to spend on anything you like. That's like having an extra £1,500 in your bank account each month for a whole year. What would you use that for?
Well, congratulations, you've won £10,000.
Oh my God, that's unbelievable. That's brilliant news.
For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 23rd of February. Good luck.
Just good luck to you if you're entering that. Still to come this morning, HS2 will be back in the headlines today. I don't know why we need a Public Accounts Committee to tell us that Rishi Sunak cancelling it has created a white elephant,
that it's
not value
poor
for
value
money.
for money.
Yeah.
Don't know how much money was spent on conducting that report. We'll be asking those questions after this.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Francis, Just Stop Oil have in the past broken the law. I remember distinctly the Dartford crossing. That ended up with 2 jailed, I believe, if I remember correctly. Is it ever justified in your view?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I mean, I would have to say yes. I mean, we're trying to preserve my life, your lives, the lives of your family, and it's not just the planet that we're trying to protect, it's the lives of millions of people. And, you know, we know from history that we have to break the law in order to put pressure on the government and to be listened to.
No one would doubt your sincerity in your views. You genuinely believe in what you fight for. But there are others who think differently. For example, there are Islamist extremists who believe that people will go to hell unless they convert to Islam. They will sincerely, perhaps, break the law in order to force people to convert. In their view, they might be saving people's lives for eternity. There might be abortion activists who say that babies are being murdered and to save their lives we need to break the law to stop people having abortions. Why do you get to say that your moral conviction is the one that's right and other people's individual moral conviction are those that are wrong?
So what's really integral to the Just Stop Oil campaign is the fact that it is a non-violent campaign. That's what separates us from the examples that you've just given. We're absolutely dedicated non-violence, both as a tactic and as a principle. So though we might be breaking the law...
If individuals take it upon themselves to break the law for whatever their course is, surely the way that we decide what society wants in general is democratic and within the law.
Well, of course, we know also that protest is absolutely integral to maintaining and upholding a democracy, and in particular, non-violent protest. I mean, I really can't express to you how severe this situation is, and I'm sure you know this.
Just when you thought it had gone away, it hasn't. HS2 set to haunt the Prime Minister again today as he faces the Labour leader at Prime Minister's questions.
Yes, a new report at taxpayers' expense, this time from the Commons Public Accounts Committee, has revealed, wait for it, this breaking news line that the HS2 between London and Birmingham, but not extending to Manchester, is very poor value for money. Newsflash.
Right, OK. Joining us now, our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, on this one. I must admit, I think we're both showing our irritation here today that they have to have a committee to tell us this. Does this committee have any clout, the Public Accounts Committee? Does it have any power? Would anything change as a result of what they've got to say, Catherine?
Well, unlikely that anything's going to change, Eamonn, but the Public Accounts Committee is actually quite important because its job is basically to go through the books of what the government has been spending of our taxpayers' money on and to work out whether this is money well spent or what they should be doing differently and to provide advice. And what they have found is, yes, surprise, surprise, when Rishi Sunak decided that he was going to cut HS2 and basically have it end in Birmingham, and whether it's ever going to make it to Euston is also open to question. He wanted to present that as the sensible decision, the right thing to do, even though he was standing in Manchester telling a great northern city, sorry, it's not coming to you. He wanted to sell it as the right decision. But the Public Accounts Committee has looked at the books and basically says they're not sure that it is at all, because in their exact words, the bit that's been left from Old Oak Common to Birmingham will not be value for money, as its total costs significantly outweigh its benefits. Now, the cost of this rump of the line, as Meg Hillier, the chair of this committee, says, is currently running at some £66.6 billion. And they're saying that it's very uncertain whether it was better, in fact, to press ahead with this bit of it than cancel the whole thing completely, which would have cost some £11 billion. And bear in mind, of course, HS2, it was originally conceived under Labour, then repeated Tory Prime Ministers ran with it. It was supposed to go from Euston in a Y shape to Birmingham, then in a leg to Leeds, that was ditched in 2021, another leg to Manchester, to link up to these great northern cities. Now it's going nowhere near the north, and there's real questions over whether it will ever, in fact, go from Old Oak Common in West London right through to Euston. The Prime Minister has said it will, but that is subject to getting private investment. And meanwhile, the mayors in Manchester and Birmingham are trying to look at getting private funding to do something about the dire state of railways in the north of England.
OK, Catherine, thank you very much indeed. We'll leave it there. Thank you. Right, it was FA Cup action last night. Replays. Paul Coit will tell you what happened. Paul.
Fourth round, replays of the FA Cup. Coventry beat Sheffield Wednesday 4-1, which means it's Maidstone in the next round. Maidstone, who obviously everybody wants to win because they're the non-league team, and who beat Ipswich a couple of weeks ago. So if you're a Coventry fan, everybody's going to want you to lose. It's as simple as that. Unless it is. That's the way it's going to be. You're going to be honest. That everybody's going to want you to lose. Everybody wants Maidstone. Leeds beat Plymouth 4-1. That was after extra time. Southampton beat Watford 3-0. So tonight is Nottingham Forest versus Bristol City, and Aston Villa versus Chelsea. And as one of these Chelsea fans that are just thinking, oh no, not another tricky game, because Aston Villa have been great at home. It's in the FA Cup. Chelsea, 4 goals shipped in the last 2 games they've played. And Maurizio Pochettino was talking yesterday. And, we mentioned this, didn't we, about Thiago Silva?
Yes,
Thiago Silva's wife.
Yes.
Thiago Silva.
Mrs. Silva.
Yeah, Mrs. Silva. Yeah. And and the thing is, she tweeted then that the fact that
Chelsea to get a new boss.
Chelsea needed change. So there was a meeting between Maurizio Pochettino and Mr. Silva, not Mrs. Silva.
Right.
I think you bring Mrs. Silva in as well.
Wind your Mrs. neck in. That's very controversial.
I think that's not maybe
He's not
what was
responsible for what she says and thinks.
Well, what would you see? The thing is, Maurizio has not said what was mentioned. He said that Thiago Silva came into the office. Tell me, how do you think it should have played out, and how do you think maybe it did?
Oh, gosh, I don't know.
A phone call to Mrs. Silva.
Yeah,
do you think so?
Yeah, definitely.
Would you please get your wife on the phone?
No, just saying, what's your problem, or why would you say that, or don't you realise your husband plays for me?
Yeah,
Pretty
how
embarrassing.
Insulting to attack the husband for something that she said. I mean...
But it's also insulting. Don't you think it's probably a bit of a silly thing to do, is to start saying the boss has to go, because then it puts her husband in a rather uncomfortable position. But then again, players these days, there's so many players, nothing really bothers him like that.
I wish somebody would start a petition to get me going and, out. Because if I was Pochettino,
yes,
he leaves with 10 million quid.
Yeah.
Sort of, it's a win-win. What's the problem?
So you think, look...
Or maybe, maybe.
There are, but I'm sure there's bosses in the past that have thought, I want to be fired. I don't want to be here anymore. I'd rather take the money and then off somewhere else. But then there's often a deal where they can't take the whole lot if they take another job.
Aye. Well, you wouldn't want to take it. I mean, I think Pochettino was in that situation. He couldn't take a job after Spurs.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think often when you have London-based jobs who live with their wife, for instance, and kids in London, but work in a more extreme part of the country.
Extreme.
Yes.
Such as?
Far away. I know exactly what I'm talking about.
OK, those extreme places.
You sort of
in
think,
extremities as opposed to
yes,
radical.
Exactly. Yeah. So you would say they would quite look forward to getting the boot.
Yes.
Getting a payoff and getting back home.
I think so. Well, he was also saying yesterday, he was also having a go at the media because basically that everybody's having a go at Chelsea, having a go at him, and he said, well, nobody gave Liverpool a hard time when they lost. Nobody gave Liverpool a hard time when they lost to Arsenal the other day, but Liverpool are top of the league, 10 places above Chelsea. They beat them 4-1, and they're 20 points more, Maurizio, so you can't really do that. But anyway, it's going to be a hard game for Chelsea, Aston Villa tonight.
It's going to be a hard day for Christian Horner come Friday. He's going to be grilled for hours, apparently. It doesn't sound very enjoyable.
It doesn't really, because this is the story that we were talking about yesterday. Christian Horner, who is the boss of Red Bull, inappropriate, interviewed on Friday for inappropriate controlling behaviour to a female colleague. That's all we know. There's also rumours that it happened in Mexico, but that's all. But there's more at play here that I mentioned. I think there's power struggles at Red Bull. He's the longest-serving principal there is in F1, and I think there's people at Red Bull that would prefer him to leave so they can have a little more power in what's going on. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
OK, Jim Ratcliffe at Manchester United controls 25% of the club, responsible for the football operations, and that includes the stadium. So, what are his plans for the stadium that we know of?
Well, we're hearing £2 billion stadium. Now, I see as a United fan, would you prefer that Old Trafford was kept and then it was built and maybe added to? Because they're saying that'll cost about, that'd just be a snip there to do up Old Trafford, take it up to about 800 million. But he wants a capacity of around 90,000, which is going to be about the same size as Wembley. So they're calling it the Wembley for the North, a new build. So if that was done, I think there's space just behind the Stretford end, isn't there? Or if it was moved elsewhere in Manchester, talking about £2 billion, because you've been there more recently than me, but it is looking a little tired. Is that fair to say? compared to others?
Yeah. I think there's no doubt about that. But I don't think anybody would like to see it relocated anywhere else.
Spurs just moved along the road, so it was only just a few yards down, so it seemed the same. Old Trafford, if they rebuilt it, and there is that space, so it could just move a few yards or move in the same area. But if it moved across the city, that's...
No, there's a big industrial estate, massive industrial estate all around Old Trafford. There could be room to relocate somewhere there. But, you see, I'm not sure that anybody wants a 90,000 seat stadium. United win, it's sold out. We're sold out at 76,000, 80,000 a time. But when we don't win, well, you can't sell those seats. So, and as Isabel said, what is all this using public money business?
We've got hospitals that are failing. We've got people fighting in the streets for NHS dentists. We're going to be talking about later on. And £2 billion of public money could be spent on a new stadium.
Well, they're going to go to Andy Burnham and say, look, any chance do you think that you could be involved in this? It's good for the community. But really, if you think how much money there is in football, it does make you feel a bit sick to think they're going to have to take public money to build a stadium. There's a lot of money there.
Doesn't feel right to me.
For instance, because of football in Manchester particularly, it's impossible to get a hotel room on match days.
Right.
For whether it's a City match day or United match day, you try and get a hotel room in Manchester.
And it just costs a fortune if you can get one.
Yeah, it does, yeah. 400 quid it'll cost
minimum,
you for a hotel room.
Or maybe as part of the... when they rebuild it, they could build a nice new hotel next to it.
Yeah, of course.
That would be
there's lots of teams do that. Reading has a hotel. Wimbledon have a hotel.
Yeah, that's right.
The Milton Keynes... What's the Milton Keynes?
MK Dons.
MK Dons, they have one.
They're sort of doing it a bit in rugby as well, haven't they?
I always wonder, though, in different areas, when you say about less desirable areas, Are you going to want to stay in a hotel? I mean, there's a lot of hotels. You think, well, why build a hotel next to a stadium? Maybe I'm missing the point.
Not to generalise, but a lot of people who go to football matches, don't they just want to go to a bar and then the football?
And then just stay in the hotel? Yeah. I don't know. But anyway, there's $2 billion. That's how much the whole thing's going to cost. But, well, I say that's the estimate now, which by the time it comes up will probably go up to $4 billion. But they need a new stadium, so it's how they're going to do it.
I think we'd play in a cowshed if we just had a team that could consistently win. That would just be...
Focus on the team, then worry about the stadium afterwards. Maybe that's the
Thank you very much indeed, Paul Coit there. Still to come, we're going to be taking a look at the front pages, the big stories of the day, and making the news. Norman Baker, Claire Purcell this morning.
Lee Anderson's Real World. Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat.
Yep.
Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and...
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. Yeah. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially, just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence.
Yeah.
So that is the highest offence that we work with.
Okay.
But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offending behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane, Dr. Jane, and I guess for some people, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
Hi, Rishi Sunak here. Join me for a special GB News People's Forum Live on Monday the 12th of February. I want to hear about the issues that matter to you. For your chance to be part of the audience and to put your questions to me, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com. See you there.
What's in the papers? Yeah, we've got Norman Baker. We say good morning to Norman, and we've got Claire Purcell here to go through those. Let's look at those front pages. Daily Mail, first of all, and a lot of the papers have this. So they say Harry spent 45 minutes with King Charles. You'll see a different variation on that with the Sun later on.
Yeah, The Guardian focusing on the rate of over 600 weekly emergency referrals to child and mental health services in 2022 and 23. And you can see the King pictured there as well.
And the Mirror reporting on the King's response to his cancer diagnosis. Daily Telegraph leads with what they call is a 30-minute meeting between the King and Prince Harry at Clarence House in London yesterday.
Here's the Times. They're also focusing on Prince Harry's UK visit to his father, the King.
And the Sun, King's 30-minute reunion with Harry there as well. Claire, what do you make of this? We were discussing, the brevity of all of this, whether who's right or wrong. Just can't understand why the King had to leave 30 minutes, 45 minutes later.
Well, he's the King. It's his prerogative, I suppose, and it's up to him who he spends his time with. You don't know what conversations have been had prior to that. You don't know if they've been in touch over the phone.
Doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't look good. But every family has these kind of arguments. Unfortunately, this one is the royal family and it's played out on every front page, which I don't think helps. If you've got a situation like this...
It's quite simple. The lad lives in Los Angeles. I'm no huge fan of his, whatever, but he lives in Los Angeles. He's definitely done wrong. He makes the attempt to get on a plane, come to London, fly, what is it, 7, 9, 10 hours? I don't know what it is, all through the night. He gets to London, goes to see his sick dad. The dad, they have a chat for half an hour, 45 minutes. That's it. That's the best you can do.
It was almost the optics of seeing the car whizzed into Clarence House and then, you know, very shortly later, within the hour, the King leaving. It was almost as if the King was like, oh, Harry's here, I've got to get to
I've got to get out. So, I mean, yeah, OK, it doesn't look good, you're right, but we don't know. Nobody knows what the actual relationship between them is. And I think that we all speculate endlessly on whether it's 30 minutes, it's 45 minutes, should he have come sooner, he's flown through the night, hasn't bought the great-grandchildren, all things like that. And I don't think that's massively helpful for their relationship. I think they need to be able to reconcile should they wish. We don't know what conversations have gone on previously on either
If he was
side.
my son, do you know what I'd have said? Son, we're getting on a helicopter here. Come with us, fly to Sandringham, we'll spend the night there, whatever it is, have your breakfast tomorrow, whatever it is, and if you want, fly back to London. You could have embraced him and brought him on board.
And that could still be the case, but the point is it looks bad and nothing happens by accident within the royal family. Every single move, arrival, departure is very carefully choreographed. Would you leave so swiftly after your child travelled through the night, your estranged son?
Well, probably not, but I mean, we don't, as Claire said, we don't know what happened, and the reality was he did make the effort to come across from Los Angeles. He may be intending to see the King again. He may still be here in this country and having another meeting. So I don't think it's not possible to actually analyse what happened and why it was 45 minutes. What we do know is that some of the papers have got it in for Harry because he's been taking legal action against the papers, the Mail in particular. So the fact that the Mail is going to have an Harry front page.
Well, except they give him 15 minutes longer than everybody else did.
Well, I mean, and on that, Norman, I mean, look, yes, OK, there are court cases going on between the papers and between Harry, but a lot of the bad feeling that the papers reflect are held by people in this country who feel that the Sussexes have attacked the royal family, whether that be in accusations that there are racists within the royal family, that the Princess of Wales is cold, that Queen Camilla had sacrificed Harry on an altar of PR. All of these endless criticisms and allegations that have come unnecessarily from the Sussexes.
Yeah, look, I'm not
it's not just well, no, but I think just to say it's because there's legal action against them.
Well, it's partly that. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is I'm not defending Harry and Meghan because I don't think they behave particularly well and they've been victims of their own idiocy, to be perfectly frank with you. But it is the case that the papers are very keen to make everything Kate does look fantastic and everything Harry and Meghan do look terrible.
Well, Kate's
that's what they're doing.
Wrong, though, has she?
Well, I mean, according to the paper, she hasn't. But, I mean, we don't know. I mean, you go back to the 1990s, Diana and Fergie. The same thing was played out there. There are people who are up and there are people who are down. And it helps sell papers if there are heroes and villains.
Well, you say we don't know if she's done anything wrong. She hasn't done an interview with Oprah. She hasn't written a book with all her grievances in. I mean, just, you know, quite comparatively.
Well, the only thing I think you can't deny is that Charles dictated this time, not Harry. Harry made the effort of being there. Charles dictated it was going to be 30, 45 minutes. Right, let's talk about mental health, Norman. The number of children referred for emergency mental health care in England has soared. By how much?
Well, it's soared by a huge figure, actually, according to the Guardian front page. 32,500 emergency and urgent referrals made to child and adolescent mental health services in 2022-23. These are urgent ones. And the startling figure, which is on page 18 of The Guardian, is that last year there were 1.4 million children referred to this particular service, child and adult mental health services. 1.4 million. That's a huge percentage of the children in this country. And, you know, I remember when I was an MP, it was relatively rare to have referrals to this CAMS, as it's now called. Relatively rare. Now it seems to be commonplace. And I think this is partly down to probably COVID, when children weren't at school, they were isolated at home, they missed out on their education, missed out on their social contact. I think that's probably had an effect on them.
I'm sure you're right. Yeah, it's terrible tragedy, this. Any thoughts on that, Claire?
Yeah, I mean, the mental health services have always been a Cinderella service as it is. There are very few places for, especially for young people with eating disorders, for example. And the threshold in order to treat somebody means that they have to be particularly ill. We need to have a look at what we can do with prevention and focus on prevention of mental health issues before they get to crisis point. And then those poor children are sent sometimes several hundred miles away from home. I mean, the service is creaking. It hasn't been thought through. Again, there is underfunding in that area, and we've all ignored it.
But that's the same thing with the health service generally, that we're seeing more and more people at A&E because they haven't been dealt with early in the process. They can't get a doctor's appointment, they can't see a dentist, they can't get the proper treatment, and they end up at an accident and emergency.
Terrible.
But the whole question is, what is mental health? And you've got to ask, when we were all young, were these kids still there? Were they around us? Were they suffering and no one knew about it? Or is this a new phenomenon?
It's hard to compare, because I think that some people would have been a little bit sad and, you know, you would have said, pull your socks up, and they managed to get on with it. But there are some quite serious mental health issues which come out of, especially those with special educational needs, and more complex cases like that, I think, that we see. But did we just not understand previously what people were going through? Did we just allow people to be really quite unwell and unhappy because we didn't get it? And I think there was a bit of that, especially growing up during the 1980s, where it was just a case of, man up and crack on with life.
These emergency referrals are talking about children who are suicidal and have got major eating disorders and so on. These are serious cases.
People who are self-harming as well. Can we talk about Gary Lineker? He's not a popular person amongst GB News viewers and listeners, but he's come out in the papers saying he actually helped to write the BBC social media guidelines that have given him more freedom to say what he pleases. This is going to infuriate people.
Well, it is, and it kind of beggars belief that you can be judge, jury and executioner on a set of rules that benefit you. I mean, it is marking your homework in the most extraordinary way, and the BBC really needs to get a grip on if they're going to have a set of rules which are going to be for everybody, or if they're just going to allow Gary Lineker in particular to say exactly as he pleases. You need to have a level of responsibility if you're the state broadcaster, and the BBC don't seem particularly happy to do that. So I don't know what hold Gary Lineker has got over them, but everything he does is absolutely fine in their eyes. And you think in any other broadcaster, in any other journalistic endeavour, you would be pulled up by an editor or a programme producer and not allowed to do it. So why is he different to everyone else?
I mean, there are lots of conspiracy theories spin around this, but do you think there's any truth in the suggestion that the reason the BBC are so fond of him is because they espouse the same left-wing views as him? I don't think that's necessarily true. Clearly, he's entitled to put his views forward as to what the rules should be, as is everybody else in the BBC, or indeed people outside the BBC. Well, putting them forward is different from writing. Indeed so, exactly so. That's the point I want to make, that he's entitled to put his views forward, but ultimately someone else has to take the decision as to what the rules are. And if the suggestion is he's made the rules and decided what the rules are, that's clearly wrong.
I think it's all got to do with the Premier League contract. And I think that the BBC are worried that without Gary Lineker, they may seem less credible bidding for a Premier League contract.
Right. Yeah, you might be right.
And that's basically the crux of everything that goes on, and he's worth it to them on that front.
But for a state broadcaster to think in that way and allow that to be the main reason for a set of decisions when we, the taxpayers, are funding it.
Without him, they don't get the football. That's,
But it's still our money, and I still take great exception to being told what to believe by Gary Lineker when I'm paying for a licence fee and I have no say in it. We're about to speak to the Health Secretary. Before we do, Norman, hopefully just time to squeeze in the story on the front of the Times, a subject that Eamonn and I both feel strongly about, and this is the need to get a grip of the sales of junk food in this country.
Yes.
It's far too cheap, it's far too easy, it's far too prominent in its position, and Labour say they want to get tough on this.
Well, I support, actually, this attempt, and of course there are many Conservatives and Lib Dems who want to get tough on it as well. Not Liz Truss. Liz Truss and people like her seem to think it's OK to let children do what they want and be ill as a consequence of that. So looking after children's health, which is a bit back to the other story we're covering, seems like a good idea.
Is that not the nanny state?
Well, I don't think it's a nanny state if you look after children's health.
But it should be the nanny state. It should be if you're being poisoned. You know, if custard creams are killing us, they shouldn't be for sale in a supermarket. So tell us the truth.
And I quite like Wes Streeting's quote in here. He's a Labour spokesperson, to say that we should use Tony the Tiger to sell fruit and vegetable instead.
Interesting, because they're great. The time, 12 minutes now before 7 o'clock.
We are going to be talking to the Health Secretary now. Victoria Atkins is standing by from Westminster. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. We were just talking a moment ago, I don't know if you could hear Liz Truss's name being mentioned. You'll be aware that there was a big event happening in the capital yesterday, popular conservatism, and lots of things being suggested there that the government ought to do to try and make themselves more popular. And among those blacklisted were environmentalists, supporters of LGBT groups and ethnic minorities, all branded extremists. I wonder if you agree with Liz Truss on those views, or if you agree with Lord Gavin Barwell, former Chief of Staff to Theresa May, that she should lose the Tory whip over those comments.
I didn't hear your conversation. I didn't hear Liz Truss yesterday because I was visiting Great Ormond Street Hospital as Health Secretary. I tell you, the single most thing we can do to help entrench our reputation for popular Conservative policies, that's delivering on dentistry, which is why I'm delighted to be out this morning delivering the dentistry recovery
and we will
plan,
talk about that,
this is
but
an
to
issue
be
for
clear,
people,
sorry,
and we want to deal with it.
And we will talk about that as an important issue, but I did, you know, the principle, do you believe those who espouse environmentalism are extremists, for example?
No, and we have a very proud record as a government on tackling both climate change and ensuring that our carbon emissions are brought down, because we all understand that this is one of the greatest challenges facing humanity over the next century, and we are doing everything we can to ensure that the UK continues to lead the world in cutting, for example, carbon emissions, but we do so in a way that is fair. So the Prime Minister has taken a very long, hard look at this and made some very long-term decisions for our future, and I think we're in the right place on this.
Health Secretary, why is NHS dental care so abysmal?
Well, we know, I'm sure we all remember, during the pandemic, that dentistry was one of the sections of the NHS that was particularly hard hit. The whole of the NHS was hard hit, but with dentistry, you'll remember, we had all of the problems of reopening dental surgeries. And so what we know, having tried to reform some of the contract last summer, we want to go further and faster, because I want to open up dental surgeries and appointments to more people around the country. So the plan that we're announcing today ensures that we are getting dental care faster, simpler and fairer towards people that really need it. For example, bringing dental vans into those most underserved areas across the country. I'm a rural and coastal constituency MP. I know how tough it can be to find a dental appointment locally. We'll be rolling out dental vans to help in the immediate term with some of those issues. We're also ensuring that NHS dentists are being paid more to look after people. We're going to be creating some 2.5 million more appointments as a result of this plan. This is really good news. There is more to do. We absolutely accept that, but this is going to make a meaningful difference to people's health.
I remember when I was at primary school, the dentist used to come and visit. I'm sure that doesn't happen today. I'm not sure if it does happen today, but your idea is basically to pay a lot of dentists more money, pay them about £6,000 a year or £7,000 a year over 3 years, and you think that will go a long way to solving this problem?
Well, Eamonn, thank you for a nice segue into our operation called Smile for Life. This is exactly as you've described, about helping babies and children, the youngest of children in nurseries and family hubs, helping them understand how to start brushing their teeth, helping mums and dads understand how to help their children brush their children's teeth, so that by the time they get to school, they are already brushing their teeth. It's part of our our daily habits. And also also, of course, helping pregnant mums, because we know that bad oral health in mums can have an impact during pregnancy and beyond. So we're trying to very much start from the very beginning of life through to adulthood as well.
Yeah, and in
we'll
total,
be sending
2.5 million,
dental
you say?
teams into reception.
Okay, total 2.5 million additional.
We're sending 2.5 million more appointments, and as I say, the work in nurseries and family hubs, as well as for those areas that are most affected by ill health, oral ill health, we will be helping schools with
you made that point. And I'm sorry to rush you. We've got limited time.
Yeah, it's really
so 2.5 million. I believe there are 12 million waiting for NHS help. The British Dental Association have said that your plans lack credibility and that the contracts need reworking because it frankly does not pay to be an NHS dentist. They get paid the same to replace one filling as they do 10. They get paid the same to do complicated dentistry as they do simple. When will you do serious work at addressing NHS contracts?
Again, we've committed to reform this contract. As I say, there were some reforms last year, and it's fair to say there is divided opinion as to how best to manage lists. We've seen in Wales they go for what's called a list system. It doesn't work. They have far worse results than we have in England. But we want to work with the dental community, with professionals, to ensure that we get the contract in the right place. But it's also actually about helping people like dental therapists and hygienists, making sure that, rather as we have done with pharmacists, helping them to work to the top of their licences. So we will be bringing forward legislation quickly so that hygienists and others can do even more in surgeries, thereby helping dental surgeons with the more complicated cases.
Can I just ask you about the King? Obviously, the nation very concerned about his health, and it's really highlighted the need for swift action when it comes to cancer treatment. And a reminder, really, of the pledge that Rishi Sunak has made to try and cut waiting lists. He's admitted that progress has not been fast enough. Why can't you get a grip of this problem?
Well, of course, our thoughts are very much with His Majesty and indeed the whole of the royal family at what must be a very difficult time for them all. In terms of cancer, we know that we are thankfully diagnosing people at earlier stages. We're seeing more people than ever before. Last year, we saw in just the single month of November, we saw some 12,000 people every single day, working day, for urgent referrals for cancer.
Yes, but the waiting list's longer than before Rishi Sunak made that pledge.
Than before the pandemic. So, yes, so again, a number of factors here. Let's not pretend this is simple. One of the factors we know is that, sadly, industrial action has had an impact on our waiting list. So in the month of November, again, we saw the waiting lists fall by 95,000, and that was the first month where we did not have any industrial action.
Health Secretary, got to say goodbye to you. We're out of time.
Increase in demand.
Thank you. Lovely talking to you.
Right.
Thank you very much indeed. We should say lovely listening to her. She can talk, can't she?
She can talk.
She's good. Here's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. It's a chilly start out there for many of us, but plenty of bright weather for the rest of today, although cloud and rain will linger across the far south. That will come and go, especially across parts of Devon and Cornwall through the day. It's going to be on and off rainfall. The cloud also extends up to around the M4, but north of that, actually plenty of bright spells, some patchy cloud around, and continued sleet and snow showers for the north and west of Scotland. One of the two of these getting into parts of Northern Ireland as well, but actually away from these showers, feeling perfectly pleasant with temperatures of 7 to 8 Celsius across central parts and light winds, although it will stay windy in the far north and northwest. That wind will continue to drive snow showers into northwest Scotland overnight. Meanwhile, the next bout of wet weather returns to the south and southwest. This will be falling as heavy and persistent rain for parts of South Wales and southwest England by dawn. Mild here, but cold further north with temperatures well below freezing for parts of Scotland and northern England. And as the rain in the south moves north and bumps into the cold air, well, it's going to turn increasingly to snow, mainly across mid-Wales, the Midlands northwards. Increasingly, that's going to affect Northern England and Northern Ireland later in the day as well. But it's certainly going to be a wintry day with that snow building up, and some significant snowfall over northern hills could cause disruption.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
I'm interested in your Royal Protocol story there about how the Queen would not be expected to visit the King more than once at the hospital or whatever. What would the benefit of that be? I'm just trying to work out why that
Well,
would be
I suppose it's to avoid lots of people outside making a big... Panicking and all the photographers. But otherwise, I think it's very strange. It's a sort of not showing your emotion, whereas Camilla will show her emotion because she loves him so much.
But any normal person would go and visit their loved ones in hospital.
Yes, they would, but you see, they never went with them, even when they went in. And only rarely would they go maybe once, if it's quite a long stay. But otherwise, they don't. They must talk on the phone. But I think this, you want to hug, you want to chat, you want all those things. And I think, good to her. I mean, she's so good. She's following all the routine.
Yes.
And what is expected of her, more so, because she's been working very, very hard the last month. And but when it comes to actually showing her caring for her husband and the King, she wants to be there with him.
And I believe he's probably expected to be continuing with his red boxes whilst he's in there, still working, but from his sick bed.
No, I don't think he can take the red boxes into hospital. I think they will be ready for him when he comes out.
Okay, so
he
complete
can...
A lot of boxes.
From work.
And he might have some paperwork, but I think those are so confidential that they can't be taken in. I mean, if he falls asleep and they're there, you know, you don't want to risk it. I'm sure he's got protection all the time, but I think it's not done. I don't. That's not done.
Well, he changed the location for the procedure, didn't he, so that the taxpayer didn't have to pay for 2 sets of security at 2 different hospitals.
Yes.
Good morning to you. Good to have you with us. It's just turning 7 o'clock on Wednesday, the 7th of February.
You're having breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel here on GB News. The headlines: a swift exit from the King after a 45-minute meeting with his son, Prince Harry. Is a royal reconciliation possible?
Is it the government's biggest white elephant? HS2 is set to haunt the Prime Minister again today.
Yes. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak might have thought that making that call to stop HS2 at Birmingham would put to bed a lot of the criticism of it. Not a bit of it. Now MPs are saying it's not value for money. They might have been better to scrap the whole thing. I'll bring you the details shortly.
Also coming up, as the best and worst degrees for earning a high salary are revealed, we'll be debating whether it's time to ban so-called Mickey Mouse degrees.
And in sport, Andy Murray's difficult year continues. Difficult. The Grand National start time moves, which apparently makes it safer, and the greatest new player unveiling of all time we'll have for you.
A chilly but bright day for many of us today before some significant snow across the central third of the UK. Tomorrow, more details in the weather forecast coming up soon.
What? Giddy up. What's this about the Grand National and time moving?
Well, it's going to move from...
Earlier or later?
Earlier, 5:15 usually. Yeah. Going to move it to 4, which apparently will make it safer.
Why?
Any idea why you think it may be safer?
Fewer races before, so the ground's less churned up.
Correct.
Boom.
That's what it is. It's about the ground. It's about later on because it gets more churned up. But I think there's bigger things at play here. I mean, the size of the fences, the number of the horses.
National used to happen at 3 o'clock.
Yeah. And then probably TV. It's moved to later, 5:15. It's always TV.
We always ruin everything.
It is always TV.
Yeah.
So they moved to 5:15. So now they're going to move it a little earlier, but which they say is going to make it safer. But how much safer? It worries me. I've always loved the Grand National, but I got to say, still, if any horse dies during the Grand National, it's one too many.
Oh dear.
OK, thank you, mate. Thank you very much indeed. Good morning, everybody. Top story this morning. Prince Harry has returned to London. He rushed home to see his father after his cancer diagnosis. The pair are believed to have spoken for about, wait for it, 45 minutes is the maximum we've got on this one. Then the King jumped in that copter and headed off to, where did he go to? Sandringham, that's where he went to. But he didn't hang around with his boy.
Yes.
So that doesn't seem to be too good a sign. Our royal correspondent, Richard Fitzwilliams, joins us here in the studio. What do you think of this, Richard? What do you read into this?
I think you could read more or less what you want into it, since obviously none of us were there, nor do we know what they actually said. I mean, this obviously is the difficulty. It wasn't a long meeting. On the other hand, Harry made the effort. I mean, what is so important is that in the coming months, which are going to test the royal family and, of course, be so difficult, so frustrating for King Charles, the Sussexes, at least we must hope they are cooperative, and certainly if some form of reconciliation can occur during that time, and it's going to take a long time, and with good reason, since they've spent so much of the last few years attacking the royal family. If this happens, it only makes sense in the circumstances, especially given the diagnosis, which the King shared with Harry, of course, and which we don't know in detail.
Look, there's no doubt a father and son will always love each other, no matter what has happened. But it is worth reminding everybody exactly what Harry has said about the King's wife. You know, his brick, as she's been described, his absolute strength and stay. He described her as sacrificing Harry on the altar of PR. Now, he was whizzed in yesterday to Clarence House, 2:45 p.m, straight from the airport, and shortly after that, at 3:38, the King and Queen were seen departing. And when we've been discussing it this morning, you know, far be it from me to impose my own opinions on this, but if my son had travelled through the night to come and see me, I probably would hang around more than that to
I
see
certainly would, since everything royal appears either to be planned or certainly ought to be planned, I certainly would have given a very different impression. But on the other hand, I mean, if you consider what has happened in recent years, as we all know, the Sussexes have monetised the royal family for gain, and also the attacks have been tremendously damaging. But on the other hand, of course, we're dealing with the dreaded C word, cancer, which millions have been affected by, and obviously this is understandable. I mean, Harry I'm sure, was absolutely devastated to hear this news, and was very sensible coming by himself, because I don't think it would have been appropriate if Meghan had come with him, and he does seem to have appreciated that and taken that on board.
What about Prince William and all this? We're told there's no reconciliation expected between the brothers. Worth remembering that in Harry's book Spare, Kate accidentally in Holland was identified as being one of the royal racists that they alleged in the Oprah interview, and he also described her as being cold and aloof, and having made Meghan cry on occasion. Any surprise then, do you think, that Prince William isn't rushing to see his brother?
I think we must realise, firstly, that is the obvious headline, and it is headlines, and obviously it's been widely discussed, but their brothers reportedly haven't spoken for months, and you wouldn't expect in a circumstance like this, especially with Catherine recovering from abdominal surgery, which she won't take on royal duties, apparently, to the earliest after Easter, and the fact that William has 2 engagements today, and the fact also that this places him, the diagnosis for the King, under a lot of strain. I don't think that's surprising. But equally, if there is to be some form of genuine reconciliation, it has to be through the basis of trust. And there isn't trust between the brothers at the moment, so perhaps it's just as well.
But Prince William will be back in action today and having to come back into the royal rota, as it were, a little bit earlier than planned after Kate's surgery.
Well, an investiture, the East Anglian, a gala of the ambulance, London, I think the air ambulance. I think this is what we're going to see more of in the coming months. And also, there is the matter of the overseas tours. The King and Queen were planning to go to Canada, it was reported. Later in the year, there was the CHOGM, the Commonwealth Heads of Government, is in Samoa in October, and there's going to be a tour of the Antipodes, which will be very, very stressful physically. Now, to what extent and how this is going to be planned, certainly or hopefully, since they are realms, if it isn't possible for the King and Queen to go, then hopefully it will be possible for Prince William, perhaps even solo. We'll have to see how things develop. But it is a nightmare for royal planners and, of course, so deeply frustrating, you can imagine, for King Charles, some 17 months into his reign, and this happens.
Do we know if William's replacing his father at this function tonight, or was he going anyway?
He was going anyway.
All
it
right.
had been announced, in fact, just before we had the bad news on Monday. But there's no doubt, I think that the Waleses have taken on fewer patronages quite deliberately because they can do much more for the ones they've taken on. So the Earthshot Prize, for example, with William, or early childhood with Catherine, and they give a tremendous boost to them.
What do you make of the way that His Majesty the King looked yesterday? Lots of people relieved and reassured to see him after we've heard that he has started his treatment as he was being driven from Clarence House to his helicopter at Buckingham Palace. You had different analysis of the pictures that's on most of in fact, all of the front pages this morning.
There are two photographs in particular. One of them looks reassuring. The other, I think, looks extremely strained. Given the circumstances and the treatment has started, you would perhaps expect that. But it is a deeply worrying time. And also, of course, if you are a patient, as he is, an outpatient, to be sure, but nonetheless, any time you appear in public with the way people will analyse every single second that you're seen. It certainly shows that being a royal, your life is not your own.
Well, thanks for your analysis, Richard. Thank you very much indeed. We really appreciate that. Richard Fitzwilliams is a royal commentator. Thank you very much.
Lots of views on this. I'm just seeing an email. Once again, Harry will be the screaming victim. Another chapter to add to his victimhood book. People, as you can imagine, not very sympathetic or appreciative of his visit over to see his father.
OK, interesting. We're hearing that the American interviewer Tucker Carlson is to interview Vladimir Putin today. We'll bring you extracts from that interview as soon as we get it. He's a former Fox News anchor, Carlson, and he says of interviewing Putin, it's our job, we're in journalism, that's what we do, it's our duty to inform people. So he has not been supportive of America's support for Ukraine during the war effort. So we will bring you that when we get it today. Let's go to Catherine Foster, our political correspondent now. And we're going to talk about HS2, which rears its head again today, or will do, for the Prime Minister. Catherine.
Yes, good morning. Rishi Sunak, of course, went to Manchester Conservative Party conference last year and announced in that city that he was cancelling the leg of HS2 from Birmingham to Manchester. The government previously cancelled the leg to Leeds a couple of years earlier. Whether it will ever make it from Old Oak Common to Euston in central London is up for debate as well. So what was supposed to be this incredible railway linking the north with London now ends up with, as the Public Affairs Committee has described it, a rump from Old Oak Common to Birmingham. And this committee of MPs producing a really damning report saying that what they're left with basically is not value for money. The exact words were, will not be value for money as its total costs significantly outweigh its benefits. The current cost of HS2 from Old Oak Common to Birmingham is estimated to be some £66.6 billion, and it's largely because the costs of that section have overrun so massively that the government felt they had no choice but to cancel the northern legs. Poor management, certainly, but also the fact that the vast majority of that line is going to end up either underground or in cuttings, so locals won't see it, so it won't impact on the environment. That has had a massive effect on the total costs. So really bad news for Rishi Sunak. They're pretty much saying perhaps you might have been better to cancel the whole thing. The government standing very firm, saying no, this is the best decision. We're doing this for the lowest reasonable cost, and there would be £11 billion to pay if they cancel the whole thing. But to be honest, it really is an almighty mess.
OK, so they're saying maybe you should have cancelled the whole thing. Are they anyway implying that they should have stuck with it and gone the whole way to Manchester in terms of delivering value for money?
Well, they haven't said that explicitly because I think they've accepted that it's not going to happen. But certainly the maths was that if it went to the north, you would get more value for money per mile. And one of the issues about this wasn't just speed in getting from London basically to the north. It was also about capacity on the West Coast main line, and stopping at Birmingham, that is not going to solve that problem. Now, the mayor's Andy Street in Birmingham, Andy Burnham in Manchester are now trying to work with private investors, trying to come up with some sort of plan for how to increase rail capacity on that stretch and indeed in the north of England. But, there's 17 million people in the north of England. They've heard so much promises about improved transport. They've seen very little. And meanwhile, in London, of course, we have a brand new Elizabeth line, rather fabulous. So much for levelling up. That's what a lot of people in the north and the leaders in the north are saying.
Well, that's the rather fabulous Catherine Foster there, our political correspondent. Thank you very much indeed. We will leave it there. A lot of you with your thoughts about things we've been discussing today. On the King, Elaine says, Harry and Charles may have been kept apart owing to a risk of infection, she thinks. Hello, Bill. Bill says, I watch the show every morning. It kickstarts my day. I particularly enjoy watching Eamonn and his witty comments on all sorts of things and the beautiful suits that he wears day after day. I don't know how I ever got through my day before Eamonn ever came on the screen in the morning. That's lovely of him to say, isn't it?
Didn't see that. That wasn't on my printout. It must be fabrication and falsification right there.
He also says, I can also say that services in our country have been destroyed and I don't know what it will take to get them back. He's a Tory member and I can say that over 14 years of rule, I don't recognise my party now.
It is a fabulous suit, though, I have to say. And I like the dark blue tie with the pale blue shirt. It's very natty. Not quite as natty. I tell you, I spotted Aidan McGivern, and we'll get to the weather a little bit later on, but he's almost wearing like a Jack Frost kind of tribute because the snow's on the way, and he's wearing a sort of shiny blue jacket.
Jack Frost, like the detective, David Jason.
Exactly, yeah. Have a little look later on.
David Jason?
Sort of looking like that, yeah.
David Jason?
Aidan McGivern.
I never noticed that David Jason was a natty dresser.
No, Aidan McGivern in the weather.
Why'd you say Jack Frost for? The detective.
It's a tribute to Jack Frost. Oh
Not the detective, no.
No, as in, the cold weather.
Oh, the cold weather.
Yeah.
John says, kids with autism, we're talking about mental health care for kids. Kids with autism and ADHD in Leicester are having trouble seeing psychiatrists and getting medication from pharmacies because there's a national shortage. John, this is absolutely true and everybody denies it. Go to your local chemist, ask them for certain drugs or say, what drugs are you having difficulty getting? Ointments, drugs, all sorts of day-to-day things. And they will tell you the situation is quite dire in terms of the supply chain there as well. So thanks for that.
Right, it's 7:16. Here are the other stories making the headlines today. More precise details have been released about the last known movements of the chemical attack suspect Abdul Azadi. That's before he went on the run. Met Police say Azadi walked past the Unilever building near Blackfriars and then headed towards Victoria Embankment in central London. A £20,000 reward is still being offered to anyone who has information that could lead to the fugitive's arrest.
The government is sent to offer dentists cash incentives to take on new NHS patients and work in areas that are underserved in a new plan announced on our programme half an hour ago. The NHS Dental Recovery Plan also includes sending teams into schools to treat children's teeth. Here's what the Health Secretary had to say.
It's fair to say there is divided opinion as to how best to manage lists. We've seen in Wales they go for what's called a list system. It doesn't work. They have far worse results than we have in England. But we want to work with the dental community, with professionals.
Now, we were talking a little bit earlier about Tucker Carlson. He was a very famous Fox News presenter who famously got into a lot of trouble in the States and cost them a huge amount of money, didn't he? So he left. And he's now headed over to Russia, and he is interviewing Vladimir Putin, who, of course, the International Criminal Court have an arrest warrant out for his invasion of Ukraine. Let's have a listen to what Tucker Carlson says about why he thinks it's important to conduct this interview.
There are risks to conducting an interview like this, obviously, so we've thought about it carefully over many months. Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. They have no real idea what's happening in this region, here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine. But they should know. They're paying for much of it in ways they might not fully yet perceive.
Now, I entirely agree. It's very, very important that people should know what's going on with Russia and Ukraine and where their money is going. The question is, will he get any closer to the truth after speaking to Vladimir Putin? What do you think? Let us know your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Old Vlad's going to be saying, Tucker, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. They should not be sending all these arms to
We're not
Ukraine.
at war. This was a
yes,
Nazi
and they're giving us a hard time. Yes, but what a lot of nonsense. Anyway, I think the danger with this is if Putin's not challenged, it just becomes propaganda for him and what he's trying to do. Right, snow predicted for the next couple of days across the country. Let's go to Aidan McGivern. He'll tell you more.
Snazzy jacket.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. It's a chilly start out there for many of us, but plenty of bright weather for the rest of today, although cloud and rain will linger across the far south. That will come and go, especially across parts of Devon and Cornwall through the day. It's going to be on and off rainfall. The cloud also extends up to around the M4, but north of that, actually plenty of bright spells, some patchy cloud around, and continued sleet and snow showers for the north and west of Scotland. One of the two of these getting into parts of Northern Ireland as well, but actually away from these showers, feeling perfectly pleasant with temperatures of 7 to 8 Celsius across central parts and light winds, although it will stay windy in the far north and northwest. That wind will continue to drive snow showers into northwest Scotland overnight. Meanwhile, the next bout of wet weather returns to the south and southwest. This will be falling as heavy and persistent rain for parts of South Wales and southwest England by dawn. Mild here, but cold further north with temperatures well below freezing for parts of Scotland and northern England. And as the rain in the south moves north and bumps into the cold air, well, it's going to turn increasingly to snow, mainly across mid-Wales, the Midlands northwards. Increasing, that's going to affect northern England and Northern Ireland later in the day as well. But it's certainly going to be a wintry day with that snow building up, and some significant snowfall over northern hills could cause disruption.
So what do you think of the snazzy jacket?
It's very snazzy.
It's very snazzy, yeah.
Very snazzy. Just reading your comments coming in about the Grant National, Samantha says they're not just changing the start time from 5:15 to 4 o'clock. They're reducing the number of runners this year. They're down to 34. I remember when it used to be 44. at the National. They're lowering fences 11 and 27, which are ditches. They'll be lowered by 2 inches. Landing side levelled off. All fences will have foam and rubber. They are doing a standing start instead of walking in.
Joe's also got in touch about dentistry. We were talking to the Health Secretary about half an hour ago, and she says that as for paying to teach children to clean their teeth, that's what dental hygienists do.
No.
But hygienists do not get paid under the NHS, so therefore
No, that's what parents do.
Privately.
I'm sorry, it's really ridiculous. We hear the Health Secretary saying that and then we can teach children when they start primary school how to clean their teeth. What do parents do these days? Absolutely scandalous.
They're all working.
Do you remember having a... we had a code and a song used to sing, and it was up and down, till they're clean and sparkling. Did you have anything?
No, but there is an app now that kids can watch, and it tells them exactly which tooth they should be on, 3 seconds on each tooth.
Did your children go to school? I know the answer to this. Unable to brush their teeth?
Of course not.
Well,
Both
who the
potty
heck
trained
does
by
that?
2 as well, so there you go.
What is your responsibility as a parent? What are you actually there for? What do you teach your children? When I hear teachers talk about children who are not toilet trained by the time they get to primary school, absolutely ridiculous. That's not what teachers are there for.
Well, also the cost of keeping them in nappies. I don't understand why people think it's preferable to potty training. It's free when they can go to the toilet by themselves.
Well, we used to have, excuse me, Isabel, I have things to say on this subject before you get all giddy and run ahead with things. When I was at primary school, we used to have a fire, an open fire in our classroom as well.
Lovely.
I used to have an open fire in the studio for GMTV.
Oh, how
we
bring
had
that back.
We had an open fire, a gas fire behind us here.
Wonderful.
Very nice. Well, when we started out. But anyway, so then there used to be certain kids, there used to be sort of pants for certain kids who were more liberal with their bowels and their bladder. And there was always extra pants for them.
I'm so glad we're languishing on this.
And they used to dry the other pants, of course, on the fire guard beside the fire as well. Those were the days.
More liberal with their bowels. There you go, 7:23.
Well, actually, I mean, there was the smelly ones. They used to have a name like Smelly Isabel or whatever it was.
Is-a-smell is what my brother used to call me. I'll give you that one for free. Talking of free, we've got £18,000 for you, and it's tax-free cash.
Think of how many pairs of pants you could buy with that. Here we go.
This is your chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash. And if you're thinking, I'd never win something like that, listen to the moment we told Phil from West Yorkshire he'd won our last Great British Giveaway.
Hello? Phil, I've got some really good news for you. You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
You're joking. That's brilliant news.
For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 23rd of February. Good luck.
Still to come, we're talking about Mickey Mouse degrees and whether or not they pay. We'll be debating that next.
You mean you get a so-called Mickey Mouse degree, and does it actually produce earning power at the end of the day? Right.
Especially when you consider how much it costs to get a degree these days.
But I thought you're the sort of one that says university, tertiary education is about the experience, about gleaning experiences in life and wasting 3 years getting drunk all the time and whatever.
I agree with all of the above.
Well, I don't. I think you should be going
I agree
to do
that
something.
you shouldn't be getting drunk for 3 years, even though that's what university is for a lot of people.
Just get
we'll
drunk after it. We're talking about that next.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has made her much-anticipated appearance before the Scottish COVID inquiry today. It comes after allegations emerged that she deleted key pandemic WhatsApp messages, used the pandemic to push her own political agenda. But let's just cast our mind back, shall we, to August 2021, when Sturgeon was asked if she'd hand over all her WhatsApps to the inquiry. Here we go.
I think if you understand statutory public inquiries, you would know that even if I wasn't prepared to give that assurance, which for the avoidance of doubt I am, then I wouldn't have the ability. This will be a judge-led statutory public inquiry.
Which, for the avoidance of doubt, I am. OK. Well, you weren't, were you? But fast forward to today, and she was much less forthcoming.
WhatsApp messages between yourself and Mr Yusuf and Ms Lloyd were produced by you. Where did you get them?
They were provided to me through the Scottish Government.
But did you delete them?
Yes.
Did you consider yourself, against that background and your considerable ministerial experience, to be precisely the right First Minister for the job?
No, that's not how I would have thought of it at all. There's a large part of me wishes that I hadn't been.
All right, then. I'm joined now by Tory MP Lee Anderson. Lee, are those just crocodile tears?
Well, it looks like crocodile tears to me, Patrick. I mean, first we had the missing camper van. Nobody knows where that is. Now we've got this nonsense. We've got these burner phones, dodgy £5 phones from wherever they bought them from, WhatsApp messages going missing. It all looks a little bit dodgy to me. I mean, she's bleating on there, she's crying on screen. This is not cutting no ice. You know, it's crocodile tears. It makes you wonder what the SNPs are all about, Patrick. It looks... I mean, the people that have burner phones, let's be clear, people that have these dodgy phones where you can't trace them and disappearing WhatsApp messages, these are normally criminals, these are drug dealers. And you know what? These SNPs are no better than criminals.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Rishi Sunak here. Join me for a special GB News People's Forum Live on Monday the 12th of February. I want to hear about the issues that matter to you. For your chance to be part of the audience and to put your questions to me, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com. See you there.
Now, did you go to university? If so, what did you study? Performing arts? Good luck, because it turns out it's the degree with the lowest earning potential at just £22,000.
I suppose it is if you don't get a job as a result of it. But if you become an actor or singer or something, then it would be good. But if you're looking for the dosh, the highest paid degree would be the computer science degree at Oxford, right, averaging almost 90,000 just a few years after graduating. So the question is it worthwhile doing? Should these so-called Mickey Mouse degrees be banned? Let's debate that now.
Yeah, we can talk to the former head teacher, Chris McGovern. He thinks so. And we've also got the best-selling author and entrepreneur, Davinia Taylor, who thinks that we're lost without creative degrees. Good morning to you both. Chris, I'm going to come to you first, because what annoys me so much about this discussion is the value of a degree seems to be based on what you end up earning rather than the value in and of itself of learning, where, I have this argument with my husband all the time. I think you learn for the sake of learning. It's interesting, you become a better person. He thinks you should only do something if it helps you get a better job at the end of it.
Look, I'm a teacher, I'm a lover of learning, but the truth is around half of graduates are underemployed. I spoke at a conference of admissions tutors a few years ago, a national conference, and I told them that, a lot of their youngsters were working in coffee bars and so forth, and there was a hushed silence in the room. The press were there too, they saw this. And after the conference, 3 admissions tutors came to me privately and said, Chris, thank you for saying that, because no one else will tell the truth. The fact is, of course, university is worth going to if you're academic and you have particular skills. But far too many youngsters are going and they are getting debt and they're getting lots of bad experiences and they're underemployed. So this is not a good experience for them. So yes, of course we need universities to do a great job. Far too many of them, close down half of them and encourage youngsters to go into the world of work. Like myself, before I became a teacher, I worked in many different jobs. So, that's where I come from, practical side. I'm not diminishing university. It's right for some kids, but not for all. We're sending too many. It's a money-making opportunity. And the wide boys out there in the marketplace are recruiting youngsters, and they're being sold a dream, which turns into a nightmare.
I think the difficulty, Davinia, is education was politicised, particularly under the Blair Labour government, and it became a business. Did you go to third level education? And if so, did you get a degree in it? What was it?
Well, actually, I didn't. I bailed during my A-levels. I was a performing arts student and I got offered a job on Channel 4, so obviously I jumped ship. But my point is, I'm now a CEO and a founder of one of the fastest growing companies in the UK, and I have engineers in place, I have accountants in place, I have computer analysts in place, but you know what I don't have? Creatives. And I'm going to be scouring the universities around me, Lancaster, Manchester, Liverpool, for performing artists to sell my products, because without someone front of house, without someone with that personality and that performance degree, we have no business.
Davinia, you didn't need a performance degree to leap out of the screen at us this morning in your neon and looking fabulous. You don't have to go study it for 3 years at vast expense in order to do that, do you?
Well, that's where I'm going to be looking as an employer now, because, I'm not going to be going to acting agents. I want to know somebody who is trained in front of the camera to a high level. And that's where my sales are. And, we generate huge business, but it starts now with places like TikTok, YouTube. I need personalities there to get my product out into the audience and to make sure I have a new in-stream of customers. And then I have the accountants, and then I have the computer analysts, and then I have, the engineers working on the shop, on the factory floor to making sure we have a smooth production line. So there is space for these creators, and the tide is turning.
Davinia, I absolutely agree with you, but I'm just wondering whether a performing arts degree or a drama degree should be your primary source of education. I mean, should it be supplementary to something, as Isabel's husband would say, that actually gets you a job? But I totally get what you say. I think that if you have a personality, it takes you everywhere in life. And if you learn how to act, I think when I look back at my own education, being involved in drama actually helped me to cope with all sorts of situations in life.
Exactly. I'm the mother of 4 boys, and my first one, number one, he's just finished his GCSEs. He's not university. I'm going to have to try and get him on a building site, because that's where he's going to earn his money. We do need tradesmen. I've got 4 boys, and I can see 2 of them going into the trade and maybe 2 of them being more academic. So I understand your point. I'm not scared of people going straight into the workplace. I didn't do university because I got offered a job. Maybe I was lucky, right place, right time, or maybe I just had that get up and go. But some people need a little bit longer. And if they want to be a creative, there are tons of jobs on the cruise ships, in Panto. It is a huge industry. The performing arts are neglected.
OK. Chris, what would your advice be? You always have this situation, kids from 15, 16 years of age have to choose subjects for A-level. They've got to think about what degree they're eventually going to take. What would your advice to them be, whether they should go to tertiary education or not?
Well, look, I'm a great supporter of the creative industries, and it's actually, for Britain, it's one of our great success stories. But if you look at who makes it in these creative industries, they're people with confidence, they're people with money, and they're people with contacts. It's dominated by public school. Davinia herself went to a public school until she was 16. She's a shining example, by the way, of what you can achieve without going to university. My advice to young people is to do what you're interested in, of course, but remember, only 2% of people who are qualified to act on the stage are actually working today. There's very little opportunity there. You have to be lucky. Davinia is fantastic. She's a success story. Most people won't be. So don't have illusions that you're going to make it in this creative industry unless you've got talent. And if you've got talent, you don't need to go to university.
Although, I remember having a teacher like you at school who was our philosophy teacher. And I remember him saying, none of you are going to amount to anything. You're all a waste of space. You can't, as a teacher, say, close down avenues for kids. You have to say the world's your oyster, give it a go, follow your heart. That's what it's all about, being young. Have a go, because otherwise we miss out on all these stars. Otherwise they'll give up before they've even tried.
I agree with that, but don't put children in a position where they think they can do anything they want. Tell them they go for it. I would be the first to say that. Look, John Lennon was written off as a youngster. Of course you can succeed. Davina's a fantastic example of that. But be realistic as well. Be truthful. Tell children, look, if you go to university, you may not get the job you're looking for. Be honest about it. And look, good kids will come through. And we, by the way, are brilliant, as Davinia shows, at the creative side of things.
Davinia, a lot of love
regardless
for
of
you.
university.
I'm normally getting
have to
shouted
say,
at by headmasters, so this is all new to me. I feel like I've got a gold star.
You don't need some whizzy young tech person to sell your product. You're a walking advert for it. Good to talk to you both, Davinia Taylor, Chris McGovern. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. The big problem in life are CVs and interviews. I always think that I can see a youngster straight away and know whether they've got what it takes or not. And you have to meet somebody in person. It's getting to meet them in person as opposed to applying with
We were taught eye contact, firm handshake, big smile. That was an absolutely winning formula. My husband, again, we were just talking about this over the weekend, he says the number one thing he looks for in youngsters that he interviews is humility. He can't bear people who come in, you know, trying to big themselves
like
up.
The
I'm
Apprentice.
Billy, this, that, and the other. He can't bear it. He wants to see someone who's quietly effective but humble, which is interesting.
I just want to see people who are good. And it's obvious to see people who are stupid. You look at people, stupidity shines out of mine. It does. Do you not think you can see stupid people? There are a lot of stupid people out there.
There are.
Yeah, which is I've no time for. I don't mind people who do things and don't succeed and whatever, and they think they've gone the wrong direction or whatever. But then there are people who are just stupid.
Yeah, stupidity's on the rise.
Stop wasting my time.
We can agree on.
Stupid. Now talking of
stupidity.
No. You are the prime example of someone who radiates personality.
Yeah.
But that's good. But he's stupid. Is that what you're going to say?
No. Did you go to university?
No, never went.
University of Life.
There were two kids in my school at the time. Looking back at the early 80s, only two went to university. One came back after 2 weeks because he missed his mum, and the other one became a teacher. And that was it. They were the only two.
Yeah. No, but you see, that's why you're one of the smartest people I know. You can turn your hand to so many things. You've got a tremendous personality. He also has the humility that your husband
definitely got
that was looking for as well. Yeah. So all in all, who do you think, or where do you think you got those skills from?
Where did I get those skills from? Probably family. Probably family. I think it's grounding. I think that's where it comes from. I think so many people, and then you see often, you know, you can see that in the parents and how you're brought up. And I think that even lasts right the way through the rest of your life.
I know. My brothers have all got real jobs. I've got 4 other brothers, and people used to come to my dad when he was alive and say, "Your son's doing well. Son's doing really well." Yeah. And my dad would say, "Which one? Which one is that?" He would never single me out ahead of anybody else. And I think he was very right to. Very, very right to.
That's lovely. I need to remember that.
Yeah. But there we go. What have we got?
We've got some sport coming up. We could talk about the Grand National. It's a little way to go. It's not until April, but they start with about 90 runners and they whittle it down. So we'll talk about that. Tennis, and also the greatest unveiling, Eamonn, that there's ever been of a player. It's magnificent. We'll show it to you.
Of what sort of player?
A new player that's gone to a club.
Footballer?
Yeah, and they unveil him to the crowd. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, we'll talk about all that and lots more after this very short break.
(2024), a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns. We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Welcome to the show. Superb stuff, great footage. So you're right in the thick of it there. What's the mood on the ground?
Well, I've left there now. I've actually now come to that EU Council summit that I was talking about. It's still pretty chaotic. The entire city of Brussels has been completely clogged with these tractors, sort of 3 abreast in most of the roads across the city. The people of Brussels aren't particularly happy. I mean, this is sort of reminiscent for some people of the Just Stop Oil protests, you know, people gluing themselves. People are unable to get to hospital appointments, and there's a lot of upset about the destruction that's happening on the streets of Brussels today. But on the other side, there's also the protests, which the farmers are saying that EU green laws simply are not able to fit with what they need to do to keep their businesses going. And just before the protests happened, we saw the European Commission actually make some concessions to the farmers' protests. And this is on the demands that were put on them to set aside somewhere in the region of 5% of their land for regrowing for biodiversity. A lot of the farmers have said that's not possible, and the European Commission has said that they can delay that coming in. So they have won a small concession with these protests.
And Jack, there's a feeling as well, a huge dissatisfaction that the European Union has managed to find 50 billion euros in aid to send to Ukraine, and yet farmers in particular are on the receiving end of net zero targets, taxation on diesel, and endless red tape. So many farmers, Jack, saying they're measuring ditches to see if they have to drain them or not. There are minimum requirements on the width of battery hen enclosures. Endless red tape, as Jeremy Clarkson pointed out in Clarkson's farm in Britain. They've simply had enough, and they're shouting, Ursula von der Leyen, we are here.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Next Monday is February the 12th. Now, circle in your diary and on your TV planner, 8 p.m. GB News, OK? Why is that, Isabel?
Well, there's nowhere else to be because we are hosting a GB News People's Forum with nobody other than the Prime Minister himself. It will be live, it will be 1 hour long, and it will be a Q&A session. And those questions will be generated from where?
From you, watching, from you, your questions directly to the Prime Minister. Think of that access. Think of that. More importantly, think of a question, and here's how you can get involved.
Hi, Rishi Sunak here. Join me for a special GB News People's Forum Live on Monday the 12th of February. I want to hear about the issues that matter to you. For your chance to be part of the audience and to put your questions to me, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com. See you there.
What would you ask him? That's difficult because, I mean, obviously there's all the sensible questions, but then you want to ask things like...
Things that Eamonn asks, which are not sensible.
No, that was what I was going to say. But good point.
Yeah. I would say to him, why do you say things? It's because what I want to do for you.
I want the other stuff. Like, is it really like in Love Actually when, you know, do you ever go and dance through the corridor?
I think he would.
He's into... what's it called? Star Wars
Swinging?
and all of that.
No?
No, what, does he get his lightsaber out and swing it around? I'm just going down an avenue I don't want to go down. Anyway, you can register your interest.
Star Wars.
He loves Star Wars, yeah. I had a chat with him about it once. Yeah, goes to cinema to see all the Star Wars movies. gbnews.com/PM to put your questions directly to the man in charge.
OK. Quick hit with Paul. I've just been told.
Sorry, we've eaten all the time.
Yeah, make it quick, Coity.
Well, look at the time. It's 7:45.
What's your favourite colour? Who's your favourite football team? I'm trying to get through it.
What you'd ask the Prime Minister?
Absolutely,
What's your
What do you want to start with?
We'll start with Grand National. So we did mention that earlier. So it starts at about 94 runners. So they were announced yesterday, and then it gets whittled down as they go along.
It used to be 44, but
it's now down to 34 now.
34.
Purely for safety. So they've got it right down to 34. And so it's April the 13th. They're trying to make it as safe as possible because you don't want, obviously, any horses to lose their lives on it, which is
I've got a great
worry.
dilemma about this. I genuinely believe this is the greatest sporting spectacle on earth.
Oh, really?
Are you going?
I used to stand at Beecher's Brook and report for the BBC as they came over Beecher's for radio, and you have never heard sound like it, atmosphere like it. It's an incredible experience. It's an incredible feat of horsemanship and of being a jockey. But the dilemma is when there are deaths involved, is it humane? Is it not humane? Where do you stand on that?
It's always been something that every year since I was a kid, we always have a little flutter on it. Everybody does on the National. You enjoy it, you get excited about it. But it's been the last couple of years, I don't know whether it's my conscience, the older I'm getting, or the more publicity there is around it, but it does make me uncomfortable. So they do try and make changes.
That they're making these changes, you know, people would hate to lose the Grand National as a quintessentially British event.
I agree with
that. And as Eamonn says, to feel the thunder of galloping hooves and the ground move beside you is an experience that has to be felt.
I'll tell you an even better experience. When my kids were young, when they were sort of under 10, right? And so they were 10 and 8 and 6. And my dad we placed one bet a year, and it was Grand National, whatever it is. And what I used to do for the kids, they'd be out playing, and I'd say, "You're coming in to watch the Grand National," and yeah. And I would record the race, right, on video, right?
Yes.
And
This
then,
is so you. Go on.
and then I would rip up all the horse names, and I would make sure they would get the first 5 or so between them, or 6 between them, and I would get the losing ones.
Oh, that's so sweet.
So you put the money in the middle, and the money would be there for them to take at the end of it. So they would all get something. So it ended. They would go, "Gosh, my horses won. My horses won," and they couldn't.
And then they became gambling addicts for life.
I did a similar thing, but I always made sure that I was the one with the winner. So that's where the difference between us comes.
I think that's a fabulous idea.
I think it's a great idea.
Very, very good.
Do they know now, by the way?
They don't know now.
They still don't know.
And they wouldn't be watching. They wouldn't be watching.
Too early.
Anyway. Right, OK, coming up next, Holly Valance, what she had to say at the popular Conservative...
Remember that song?
What was that, about her belly or something, wasn't it?
She did some kind of sexy dance. Anyway, now
belly
she's
dance.
getting
Not that I
involved with the
remember.
Tories.
How sexy is that after this?
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Lots of people have different ideas, but principally a Conservative approach to getting growth is to reduce taxes so that people, ordinary people and businesses can spend more of their own money to invest and grow the economy.
So the theory is that you cut taxes and that then pumps more money into the economy.
Exactly right. And then people, it's not government that are creating wealth. It's individuals, businessmen, companies that create wealth. It's the private sector that creates wealth, that the public sector then taxes and spends.
I get the theory, but one of the criticisms of you, and I think one of the criticisms actually of all political parties, is they appear to be incapable of cutting government spending.
That's the key. I mean, and I think when I look back, is that we should have had a credible plan to reduce the increase in spending. Now, that's often a difficult concept to explain.
But it's in line with inflation, etc.
That's all right. So when you're slowing the increase, it means, one year you spend £100 and the next year you spend maybe £101 as opposed to going up to £110. So the actual level isn't going down, but you're slowing the increase. And that's very much what I tried to do. And actually, looking back, the one thing I wish I'd done, was to present a credible spending plan at the same time as the tax cuts that we announced.
You had a go, it didn't work out for whatever reason, and that analysis will go on for some years to come. We have Jeremy Hunt there as Chancellor now, hinting quite strongly now there won't be any tax cuts, but the truth of it is, under 14 years of Conservatives, for a variety of reasons, the tax burden has risen.
That's right.
To the highest since the Attlee government way back in
80 years,
1951, whatever it is.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Baker, Claire Purcell with what's in the papers, and you want to start with Holly Valance then?
Oh yes, Claire, this is interesting. So yesterday we saw the launch of the new Popcorn, not popcorn, important distinction, the Popcorn group, the latest Conservative group, and they had a big celebrity endorsement in the likes of Holly Valance, who of course famous from the days of being in Neighbours with her song, who said that she used to be a lefty, but effectively then she got rich and didn't fancy paying it all to the tax man.
I mean, it was quite something. It was a great interview to have, but it's also very easy to suggest that you could start off as a lefty and then you're very concerned about how you're going to bring up your children and how you're going to live and buy your house when you're married to a billionaire. Yeah. And I think we need to remember that.
No, but I think, I mean, you can see what she's saying here. When you get responsibility in life and when you pay bills, it's probably highly likely that your political views
No, that
change.
is true, but is she actually struggling to pay bills and worrying about
I'm not
it,
convinced that she was there for any other reason than she's got a very fat wallet, and that's what the Popcorns wanted, was to raise funds for their little jamboree.
Okay, this is what she had to say yesterday at that conference.
Everyone starts off as a lefty and then wakes up at some point after you start either making money, working, trying to run a business, trying to buy a home, and then realise what crap ideas they all are, and then you go to the right.
Well, Norman, what would you say? What would you say?
Well, I haven't ended up on the far right as she and Liz Truss have done, so I don't think that's necessarily true.
I mean, it comes to something, we're taking lectures off of an actress who used to be in Neighbours and released a pop record. And we're now taking lectures off of her and her thinking that Liz Truss is the answer.
Well, let's delve into that, because, I mean, you are a Conservative, Claire, and you've been an advisor, you worked in the Home Office, both worked in the Home Office, haven't you? But you were saying to me that you were really surprised by what Liz Truss was saying yesterday, because she was an Equalities Minister for a huge number of years. And here she is calling anybody who's defending LGBT rights or, what was the other phrase? The environment or ethnic minorities. She called them extremists.
She did, and lefty extremists at that. And it just feels a little worrying that if you care about a section of society, you want fairness for individuals, that suddenly you are a left-wing extremist for doing so. She was taking on a real hit at the environmentalists. But as a former Equalities Minister, to have those comments against the LGBT community, I think, is woeful.
Norman, Suella Braverman, we're talking about police powers for policing protests.
Well, this is more of the same that that leads into what Claire was saying, as a matter of fact, and this is extremely worrying. Braverman is saying that ministers ought to debate the ability to ban protests, and they should decide what's allowed on the streets and what's not. Well, look, we're in a democracy here. We're in a democracy where people have the right to protest, peacefully, of course, and the right to express their views. And the idea that politicians can decide who can protest and who can't, I mean, we're ending up in the Soviet Union.
But she just, well, yes, it was quite a Russian tactics, you would say.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, what about if they are, you know, protests, expressing their views, but they're hateful or even worse, inciting hatred?
Well, first of all, there are laws against people behaving in an unacceptable way. For example, if you are actually genuinely hateful and you're picking on an element of society, there are powers there in law and the police can enforce them. But it's got to be for the police independently to decide how the law's enforced, not for ministers to decide that. This is a really, really thin end of a very, very dangerous wedge.
Can we talk about this story? We're short on time, but this is a really shocking story on the Telegraph. The Nottingham killer, Valdo Calacane, who killed those lovely 2 Nottingham students recently. It's emerged he's and the school caretaker, forgive me, entitled to benefits of £360 a week because he wasn't sent to prison.
That's right, because he's detained under the Mental Health Act in a secure hospital. He is entitled to claim universal credit of up to £360 a month. Now, this has been going on for a long time. It's not a new thing. And the Work and Pensions Secretary, Mel Stride, is looking urgently into this, as he rightly should. You shouldn't be able to have that much money given to you whilst you're in hospital. You imagine the end of his sentence, how much that's going to leave him in the bank.
But what does he need money for at all? I mean, he's locked up. He's locked up in a hospital rather than locked up in prison. Why does he need money at all? His board and lodgings are all paid for by the state. He's no need for any money.
You wonder, would he use it? Would he know how to use it? I mean, it depends how far gone he is. But you look at that and you can't imagine that he's a man who would enjoy money, but he would still entitled to.
I'm trying to think why the law would be in place for something like that. Would it be because some people who get detained under the Mental Health Act have responsibilities, children, mortgages, and if obviously then they don't have any income?
Well, so do prisoners.
I can't understand what that is all about.
Or it's just a loophole.
Yeah.
I think it's a mistake. It's a loophole needs to be closed.
Yeah.
Claire, Norman, going to be back in 45 minutes. Thank you very much indeed. We'll be back top of the hour.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
When you listen to Nigel Farage's assessment there, do you feel that maybe this is as good as it was going to get, given that we had the pandemic and it was inevitably always going to be a bit of a mixed bag?
Well, I think it's a bit of a poor excuse from Nigel there that they haven't done it properly. The facts are, Nigel, that it's not worked. It's not going to work. Yes, we will rejoin. I mean, are we better off for it? Are they...
Can I jump in there, Charlie? We're going to rejoin under which government? Because Labour aren't going to do that, unless you don't think...
But I mean, it's going to be unavoidable not to join, because I think it's getting worse and worse for us. I mean, let me just say this. Are the NHS better because we're out of Europe? No, they're not, because they're not employing more staff. Is the building trade better off? No. Is travelling abroad or to the EU or staying in the EU, are we better off? No. Are we better off because foods rise because of the EU? No. Are we better off with imports and export? No, because they're taking longer. The overall result is that we're not better off. The killer point here is 57% of the public will now vote to remain. 33% would leave. Surely that's the telling point.
It depends on the pollster, Charlie, because we were talking to a very good pollster earlier who said there's no enthusiasm for any change in a year. Maybe 10 years, they might be thinking about it.
Belinda de Lucia, let's bring you in. I'm sure you want to react to what Charlie said.
I mean, who would have thought that the UK wanting to run its own affairs and making our politicians more accountable would be so revolutionary? EU Parliament voted a majority to get rid of the vetoes, the last remaining scraps of democracy that the EU had. Now, luckily for EU citizens at the moment, you know, it means a treaty change to actually go forward. But that is the mood. The ever closer union. We have dodged a federalised, globalist, international, power-gobbling, anti-democratic organisation, and that's worth more than a few trade and travel perks for a few wealthy people in this country.
Hear, hear. Belinda de Lucia, Charlie Mullins, great to see you both.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Eight o'clock is the time. It is a Wednesday morning. Thank you very much indeed for your company. It is exactly 8 o'clock now, and this is Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster. Thank you if you're listening on radio and there's a helicopter. That looks nice. And if you're watching on TV or if you are online, the King heads to Sandringham. So he does that after just a 45-minute meeting maximum with his son, Prince Harry, who flew all the way from Los Angeles.
Yeah, as you said, the King and Queen made a very swift exit via helicopter from the Buckingham Palace garden to Sandringham. Meanwhile, a source close to the Prince of Wales says he has no plans to meet with his brother, Prince Harry. So, was the 11-hour flight worth it? Find out shortly.
Is it the government's biggest white elephant? HS2 is set to haunt the Prime Minister again today.
Has Rishi Sunak achieved the worst of both worlds with his HS2 compromise? Well, the Public Accounts Committee seemed to think so. Brace yourselves for a fiery PMQs later today.
I'm not quite as wrapped up as Olivia is there. In the sport, Manchester United could build the Wembley of the North. Saudi Arabia turn their attentions to tennis now, and the player unveiling in Chile, which involves helicopters, horses and swords.
A chilly but bright day for many of us today before some significant snow across the central third of the UK. Tomorrow, more details in the weather forecast coming up soon.
Love that. Helicopters, horses and swords. It doesn't sound dissimilar to our top story this morning, does it?
Quite right, quite right. Prince Harry, he flies 11 hours from LA to London. He says, hello, Daddy, how are you? And he said, very good. And he said, half an hour later, bye-bye.
Yes.
What went on there? Let's go to Cameron Walker and see if he can enlighten us, because the King is now in Sandringham, Cameron, but you're outside Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, I certainly am, Eamonn. It was an incredibly busy day yesterday. First, Prince Harry, of course, landed at Heathrow Airport. He was whisked off to that private Windsor suite where he was put into a black SUV, driven with a police escort to central London, where he spent around 45 minutes in Clarence House. According to the Times this morning, the meeting between him and the King only lasted about half an hour, and that's, according to a source, the reason being is because the King was tired from his procedure for his new cancer diagnosis before. A lot of people are asking this morning, well, why is it that Prince Harry flew all that way from Los Angeles to London just for a half-an-hour meeting? A source told me, who's close to the Prince of Wales yesterday, that they have absolutely no plans to meet either, which suggests to me their relationship still is very much at rock bottom between Prince Harry and Prince William. There clearly is a bit of an olive branch between the King and his youngest son, Prince Harry, because they have actually met, and Prince Harry has made the effort to fly from Los Angeles to the United Kingdom. As to whether or not that is the only meeting, we simply do not know. The Sussex team, so the team who looks after Prince Harry, are keeping incredibly tight-lipped, as are Buckingham Palace, as would be expected. We know that the King and Queen are in Sandringham at the moment, although the King is expected to return to London for more treatments for this new cancer diagnosis, which we know is not prostate cancer, but is certainly cancer, later on. And then, of course, we've got Prince William carrying out engagements later today as well, keeping calm and carrying on, but totally ignoring the fact that his brother's in the country. So it's all a bit of a messy family relationships at the moment, despite all these health scares.
Yeah.
Cameron, thank you very much indeed. In the studio, royal author Robert Hardman now, who's really got the book of the moment on King Charles that has just been released, Robert. This is I think this has got a lot of people talking, the optics of all of this, that Harry flies 11 hours for a maximum 45-minute meeting with his dad. What would you like to say about that?
Well, the royal family does do things rather differently to, you know, how I suspect most of us, if someone had flown in from the other side of the world, it would be sort of, oh, great, you know, let's make a big thing of it. But you've got a king, he's got his schedules, they're all mapped out, you've got lots of people waiting on A, B and C, you've got helicopters planned, you've got all this stuff. Harry suddenly comes in. I think the main thing is that he's there, that he's made that point, he's made that gesture. I mean, he did when he came to the coronation, you know, he flew in a few hours before to pay his respects really to his father, and then flew off again.
But is it the perception that his trip was appreciated? I mean, we can see the lad has made the effort, whether you're a fan of his or not. But one wonders, could the father not have given him more time? What was the need to take off and head to Sandringham, half an hour later?
Well, we don't know exactly at this stage. We know that, you know, they're trying to sort of minimise the pressures on the king. The main thing is he's there. We know there are these. If you look back at Harry's book Spare, if you look back at his various interviews, I mean, you could have a 2-week summit talking about nothing other than Harry's various grievances and still not really scratch the surface. So do you want to impose all that on someone who's just started treatment for cancer? It's a very fraught time for everybody at the palace. I think it's a case of, look, we're touched that Harry's here. Of course, he wants to see him, but, you know, beyond that, if it's going to start turning into a discussion about what about this, what about that, what am I going to get on this? He's always talked about when am I going to get my apology? You know, these are things that I'm sure do need to be discussed, will be discussed, you know, in a less sort of febrile environment. I mean, it's been mad the last few days, and now's not really the time to start bringing up other grievances.
Yeah, 2 words there: fraught, febrile, and that's within the palace. Of course, the nation very, very concerned about the king as well. But he demonstrated this as he walked out of the hospital last week, keen to be seen for the cameras, partly to give his daughter-in-law the space and privacy she needed, who was leaving quietly out of the back door. And then again yesterday, as he made his way from Clarence House, very publicly, window down, characteristically. And is this a symbol, do you think, of the kind of king that he is? That he, you know, in spite of all the worry, he wants us to... he's keeping calm and carrying on.
He certainly is. I mean, he's very stoical. There was a sort of misperception, I think, in recent years that he was somehow itching to become king. It's sort of perpetuated in The Crown. That's a sort of plot line. And he was absolutely anything but. He was very much of the, look, when the day comes, it comes. I'm not going to push it. He certainly doesn't believe in tempting fate. I think a lot of people think, you know, oh dear, he's only been on the throne a year and a half, and now this. I don't think he will look at it like that. The clue was in that broadcast he did to the nation just hours after the death of the Queen, where he just talked about, look, I'll serve for the remaining time God grants me. You know, that's the sort of philosophy, and he does have. He is a religious man. I think we've always tended to look at his views on other faiths, and that's always been the headlines, you know, his intention to be a defender of faith and all that sort of stuff, without actually looking at his own faith. And he does have a sort of inner calm there, and I think he'll be drawing on it right now.
He'll also be relying on his other son, Prince William, the Prince of Wales, in all of this, who has got 2 royal appointments today. Talk to us about William and the responsibility that now will land on his shoulders in this slimmed-down firm.
Well, I mean, I think possibly a little overlooked this week is just the scale of what now lands on Prince of Wales William's shoulders. I mean, he's had... You know, this is maybe not a shock, but I mean, it's an enormous demand placed upon him, because he effectively steps up to do a lot of the roles that Prince Charles, when he was Prince of Wales, was doing when the Queen was ill, which she herself, as Princess Elizabeth, was doing when George VI was ill. It's a sort of, you know, you are out there, you are the outward-facing leader of the monarchy. Now, on top of all that, of course, as we know, the Princess of Wales is still recovering from her surgery at home, 3 young children. So all this is coming together. It's a lot for him, but, you know, he'll rise to the challenge. I think it's good that we're going to see him today. I mean, for example, investitures. I mean, investitures are a key part of what the monarchy does. And with the king now out of action, and you've got all these people all up and down the country, they all want their honours and decorations and awards, and they should rightly receive them in the proper way. You know, all these things, there's a lot of slack to be taken up. And just next month, I mean, you know, we always have in March, Commonwealth Day, huge day for the head of the Commonwealth. The head of the Commonwealth can't be at Westminster Abbey for that, so I suspect that's another one for Prince William. So he's definitely going to have to rethink his diary at speed.
We were talking about yesterday how he was staring his destiny in the eye, and you ask anybody who has lost a parent in traumatic circumstances to then have your remaining parent suddenly infirm, whether you're William or Harry, that's got to be triggering in some way. But he has this unique future ahead of him. The Eye newspaper talking about how the United Kingdom's already in some form of what they describe soft Regency, and this is according to a professor at UCL. I mean, would you say that's going a bit further? I mean, the sort of playbook for this was sort of set out during COVID when the Queen was kept closely behind closed doors to prevent her from catching any infection, but she was able to continue her constitutional role. Is that effectively what we're seeing?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm very much reminded of those early days of COVID as far as the King is concerned, those sort of COVID protocols where constitutional business goes on. I don't think we're anywhere near a Regency, by the way. I mean, there's a sort of two stages for incapacitated monarch. Firstly, you have something called councillors of state, which is two members of the family step in if there's a temporary absence, and that's been used largely when monarchs have been abroad, very occasionally when they've been ill. It's only then after that you get into a regency. We're not there. He's doing the job.
Just explain to people, Robert, what a regency is.
A regency is when you have when effectively the state appoints a stand-in monarch because the monarch is incapacitated. I think in the words of the Regency Act, it's governed by Acts of Parliament, by the way. This isn't laid down by the royals. They don't make it up. It's all the democratically elected government has passed these acts, and there's a panel of 5, 3 of whom, a majority of 3, are required to say, look, the monarch's incapacitated, we're going to appoint someone else, which is the heir. It hasn't happened since the days of George III. I mean, we're just simply not there. The King is absolutely on top of his red boxes, his papers. He's seeing the Prime Minister, he's talking to Privy Councillors, all that stuff. It's exactly the same as Her Majesty, her late Majesty, was doing during the COVID pandemic. And let's not forget, I mean, you know, the Prince of Wales, as he then was, now King, was the first member of the family to go down with COVID. And those were very worrying days, I remember then. And yet within 10 days, he was on a video screen opening a hospital.
Yeah, but Robert, it's less than a week, I think, or maybe exactly a week since we last spoke to you. And, you know, we wait all this time to see you, and then we're very lucky to get 2 visits in a row. But this is not the start to Charles's reign that he would have hoped for after having waited all these years to become king. How much of a blow is it, do you think, for him personally to have to be, you know, for a workaholic, to have to put his feet up in this way?
Well, I think he certainly won't like being kept away from the public side of things. I mean, the workaholic bit, by my understanding, is that the problem is trying to slow down the amount of paperwork and the briefings and the red boxes and all the stuff that he likes. I mean, he loves all that. And that he wants all that coming thick and fast. And I think, you know, some will say, well, hang on, you need to slow down a bit. It's the meeting the people stuff, which he's keen on. He genuinely enjoys walkabouts. He likes big receptions, so even if he likes them to be a bit more sort of informal than they used to be. They're always a bit of there's a sort of element of happy chaos there, which he loves, and he just likes getting into the mix. And he can't do that because his doctors don't want him exposed to an infection. So yeah, that's going to be what's annoying him most.
OK.
Robert, thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it. Thank you for bringing us up to date. The royal biographer and Robert Hardman's book, Charles III, is available at a bookstore near you, or indeed online, as they would say.
On the old Kindle, probably. I'm sure you're going to tell us.
Lots of
ways.
It's we love bookshops too.
Historical
Did you do an audiobook version of it?
I did, actually, yes. I sat in a glass box for about 5 days and read it from beginning to end. It's a very useful process when you're an author, actually, because you pick up little literals and spelling mistakes. Well, I've got them in the reprint.
Oh, OK, perfect.
Good seeing you, Robert. Thank you very much indeed.
It.
Right, this HS2 situation, the Public Accounts Committee is going to report on this today. We go to Olivia Utley. She will tell you more on this. Olivia, good morning to you.
Good morning, Eamonn. Yes, it's a pretty damning report from the Public Accounts Committee, which is a group of MPs from all sides of the House. They've said that the HS2 compromise, which Rishi Sunak struck in October, represents very poor value for money. Now, just a reminder, what the Prime Minister said in October was that the leg of HS2 from Manchester to Birmingham, so Manchester to the rest of the West Midlands, will be scrapped altogether. And the rest of the line from Birmingham to London Euston will have a few tweaks as well. In the first instance, it will only run from Birmingham to Old Oak Common in the far west of London. And then Rishi Sunak said, if private investment can be secured, the Old Oak Common to Euston leg would be built subsequently. Now, the Public Accounts Committee have said not only that it represents very poor value for money as it stands, but also they've expressed their scepticism, as they politely put it, that there will be enough private investment to get that Old Oak Common to Euston leg built. Now, when Rishi Sunak announced in October, just before his party conference, that he would be massively tweaking HS2, it was said that it was a very strange decision. But he was very clear, he was adamant that he wanted to be realistic with the public. He wanted to only deliver what he could promise. Well, it feels as though that decision might be coming back to bite him now. And I think we can expect to hear quite a lot from Keir Starmer about this at PMQs at 12 o'clock today.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Let's get an update of what else is happening news-wise, and more precise details have been released about the last known movements of the chemical attack suspect Abdul Azidi before he went on the run.
Yeah, the Metropolitan Police say Azadi walked past the Unilever building near Blackfriars, heading towards Victoria Embankment in central London. They're offering a £20,000 reward for anyone with information that could lead to his arrest.
The government is set to offer dentists cash incentives to take on new NHS patients and work in areas that are underserved in a new plan announced on this programme this morning. The NHS Dental Recovery Plan also includes sending teams into schools to treat children's teeth. We spoke to the Health Secretary. This is what she had to say.
It's fair to say there is divided opinion as to how best to manage lists. We've seen in Wales they go for what's called a list system. It doesn't work. They have far worse results than we have in England. But we want to work with the dental community, with professionals.
Some snow is expected across large parts of the country. Aidan McGivern now with all the details. Morning, Aidan.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. It's a chilly start out there for many of us, but plenty of bright weather for the rest of today, although cloud and rain will linger across the far south. That will come and go, especially across parts of Devon and Cornwall through the day. It's going to be on and off rainfall. The cloud also extends up to around the M4, but north of that, actually plenty of bright spells, some patchy cloud around, and continued sleet and snow showers for the north and west of Scotland. One of the two of these getting into parts of Northern Ireland as well, but actually away from these showers, feeling perfectly pleasant with temperatures of 7 to 8 Celsius across central parts and light winds, although it will stay windy in the far north and northwest. That wind will continue to drive snow showers into northwest Scotland overnight. Meanwhile, the next bout of wet weather returns to the south and southwest. This will be falling as heavy and persistent rain for parts of South Wales and southwest England by dawn. Mild here, but cold further north, with temperatures well below freezing for parts of Scotland and northern England. And as the rain in the south moves north and bumps into the cold air, well, it's going to turn increasingly to snow, mainly across mid Wales, the Midlands northwards. Increasingly, that's going to affect northern England and Northern Ireland later in the day as well. But it's certainly going to be a wintry day with that snow building up, and some significant snowfall over northern hills could cause disruption.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I think this would be a good time to introduce a little bit of levity and extra cash with the Great British Giveaway.
Yes, and it is a big giveaway, £1,500 every month for a whole year, tax-free.
And it could be yours, OK? Here's what you've got to do to win the 18 grand.
There's an incredible £18,000 in cash to be won in the latest Great British Giveaway. Totally tax-free cash that you can do whatever you like with. That works out to be an extra £1,500 to play with each month for a whole year. Money to make each month just that little bit better.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. That's brilliant news.
For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 23rd of February. Good luck.
Still to come, we want to ask you this question. I mean, do you put pictures of your children on social media?
Oh, it's a very modern dilemma. I do, only because I just love them so much and I feel proud of them and I can't help but share them with the world. I do it on my private accounts rather than my public ones much, although occasionally they appear there. But is that the right thing to do? Probably not. We'll be getting into this next.
But it's all about the dangers of the digital world, really. Do you do it? Should you do it? What's wrong with it? What's right with it? That's next.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sunday mornings from 9:30.
Questions to be answered, and there seem to be a significant amount, does once again point its way to a public inquiry into exactly what happened in this case. Starmer's called for that. Would you call for that too?
I certainly think that first of all, there's one thing that's happening now. The NHS have to order an independent inquiry. That's been done. So they've got to look at all the whys and wherefores of what happened with this man. If it appears that we're not getting sufficient depth and breadth to this, then I think having an inquiry with all the powers that brings would be extremely advantageous. What I don't want is some long-winded inquiry that will take years, by which time other people will have been put at risk and maybe other lives have lost. We know what the problems are here, Camilla. Law's been passed on this. This is all about making sure on the ground we implement the highest degree of monitoring in order to ensure the safety of the public.
Has care in the community failed? I mean, it seems oxymoronic to say that it's care in the community in this case. We know that the number of psychiatric care beds has been slashed from 52,000 back in 2001 to 24,000 now. I've anecdotally, because I wrote my column about this in The Telegraph yesterday, received quite a lot of correspondence from people saying the situation with care in the community is dire. People aren't being adequately monitored. Was it a mistake to close down all of those mental institutions?
I don't think we should go back to those days when we had those appalling institutions where we just lock people away and forget about them, and not just mental health people, but autistic people and disabled people. Horrific way to treat individuals, and you know I campaign on that a lot.
I know.
However, I think if we move into a more community-based approach, which can be really good for many, many people who are on the spectrum and on that scale of mental health, we have to remember there will be a small but significant number who will continue to pose a danger. And that's why monitoring is so important.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Rishi Sunak here.
Join me for a special GB News People's Forum Live on Monday the 12th of February. I want to hear about the issues that matter to you. For your chance to be part of the audience and to put your questions to me, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com. See you there.
New research from Apple has revealed over half of parents feel keeping their children safe online is becoming increasingly difficult.
Yeah, it's a common question, though. Should parents be posting pictures of their children on social media?
Well, if you worry about their safety, the answer is quite clear,
Well, I
no.
think when parents are worried about their safety online, they're thinking, are they going to go on to, you know, video games where they talk to strangers and get groomed? I don't think they think that posting a sweet picture of their darling on holiday is endangering them, but they may be wrong. Let's get the thoughts now of the Love Island star Tyler Carr, who believes social media is just the modern version of a photo album.
And parenting consultant, there's Roma Norris, who believes children could suffer from being posted online. Now, I think the argument against is, you know, people sort of know the dangers involved. But Tyler, from your point of view, you say it's just like a photograph album. It's the modern day equivalent of all of that. Tell us more.
I mean, I obviously have been posting my son on social media since he was born. I didn't see an issue in it. I think that it'll be a nice thing for him to look back on when he's older. He already loves seeing some of the videos of himself when he was younger. And it's a really easy way for him to see it as often as he wants, for his family to check in on him that live far away. And yeah, I just don't see much of an issue in it at all.
But Tyler, why don't you just make a photograph album? Is it the relations who are far away that you want to share him with, but he can see a photograph album? And I must admit, I used to do photograph albums all the time, and I've completely gone out of the habit over the past 4 or 5 years, and I'm trying to work out why that is. Do we collect photographs? I'll tell you what I did get, Tyler. I got myself at Christmas a digital photo frame which you can email pictures to, so they're sort of stored on that, if you're with me, and they change all the time. But the whole thing is, Roma, it's having these pictures. They're precious to us. They're lovely for us. They are moments in time. But you think they have to be kept within the family?
I think there are a few things that parents need to consider, and we're constantly making decisions, complex decisions that juggle, you know, complex needs. However, 3 things that I think we need to think about when posting kids online are that they are indelible once we put them out there. They're there for years down the line. And we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe we're going to change our mind. Maybe our kids are going to change their minds. Another issue, I think, is consent, that our kids can't really consent to things that they might not fully understand, especially if they're young. And we might be leaving them open to, not only grooming, but things like bullying or identity theft. I mean, these are quite extreme examples, but also we just don't really know where it's going to go.
Yeah, and Tyler, look, I completely get it. I'm a mum. I adore my children. I'm so proud of them. I can't help but put pictures of them on my social media as and when something cute happens. But we were on holiday last summer, and we were looking for a restaurant, and the kids were hungry, and there's a lovely family photo of us in this cute little French village, and my son's got a face like thunder because he was hungry. And I put it on my Instagram story saying, oops, hanger got him, with an arrow to my son, because I thought it was funny. But turns out 7-year-olds, which he was at the time, can read. And he read my Instagram picture, because he saw it on my phone, and he burst into tears, and he was absolutely mortified that I had done it. And it really made me think about the issue of consent. I put it on there lovingly, thinking it was cute and my friends would find it funny. He was embarrassed by that because I was exposing him as having some sort of tantrum, whatever. There is a consent issue, however nuanced it might be, isn't there?
I mean, I suppose I didn't think about asking my newborn or my 4-year-old whether he minds. However, Archie will like to take the phone off me and sort of mimic the things that I do on my Instagram. I mean, it is the way that things are going. I do not want him to be having any form of social media or phone until he's a lot older. But I do think it is the way of the world at the moment. And I just think as long as I'm being careful not to show his school, not to, you know, he sees everything I put on there, he finds it funny. I suppose I might now think moving forward, maybe I should be asking him a little bit more now that he's 5 and he can, you know, really understand a little bit more whether he would like, whether that's okay for me to put that online or not. But I really enjoy sharing my moments with Archie online, and you know, lots of people get joy from watching the videos that I post of me and Archie, and I do like to also see the best in every scenario, and I think sometimes that can mask my ability to see some of the bad things that might happen from it. But I really don't. I just don't see a big enough issue to not do it.
Roma, Apple are issuing safeguarding tools, including blurring images that may contain inappropriate pictures, and end-to-end encryption to ensure privacy and the ability to create app limits. So maybe you can have the best of all worlds there with those safeguards in place.
Absolutely. That's definitely something to check your settings. You know, we're maybe not always aware of how publicly we're sharing things and actually how available they are for anyone on the internet to use, including the social media platforms themselves. The photos that we post that actually belong to them legally. They're allowed to use them. So that is definitely something worth considering. But I think even beyond that, even if we've checked all our settings, I think a really hard question for parents to ask themselves are we using social media to objectify our kids? I don't mean sexually. I mean, are we using our children for entertainment or status? And are we conditioning them to become addicted to this kind of approval?
We'll leave that question hanging there, Roma. Well posed. Thank you very much indeed. Good talking to you both, Roma and Tyler. Thank you both very much indeed.
Thoroughly modern dilemma. I don't know what the answer is. Coming up, Paul Coit will be here with all the latest sports. See you in a mo.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Elon Musk has announced that the first patients to receive a groundbreaking brain implant from Neuralink is recovering well.
This is all a bit odd. The product, called telepathy, uses a robot to surgically place a computer chip in a region of the brain that controls movement.
Yes, Elon Musk says that the first goal is to enable people to control a phone or a computer just by thinking. He says that initial tests show promising signs of brain activity, meaning that patients with paralysis could one day overcome their conditions.
Not sure about this one. Joining us to discuss this breakthrough is applied futurist Tom Cheesewright. Tom, this sounds, well, slightly terrifying.
I certainly think a lot of people will be thinking this is something out of a sci-fi horror rather than reality. But this is a technology that's been a long time coming. We've been developing direct brain-computer interfaces for a long time, mostly for the sort of therapeutic reasons that are the initial goal, at least, of Elon Musk's Neuralink, to allow people who are perhaps quadriplegic to have direct control via their brains of initially a smartphone and maybe ultimately artificial limbs or a wheelchair.
It does seem fascinating how quickly this technology is moving on. I saw demonstrations perhaps a year or two ago of people playing a very simple Pong game just by thinking, moving sort of one line on a screen up and down. This seems like potentially there has been a breakthrough that means far more complex things can be controlled just by thinking.
Well, there's lots of different aspects to this technology. The initial attempts to interface with the brain used actually quite thick prongs almost that went into the brain, and they were quite solid, and so if the brain moved, they could potentially cause damage.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
With the sport, and the thing is, there's a lot to be said about statues outside, say football grounds, for instance, and some of them are very bad, very, very bad, really bad.
Yes,
really
they are.
Bad.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
really
yeah.
bad. But anyway, you've got one you think may top the lot,
well,
and it concerns who?
Well, it's not a statue; it's actually an unveiling of a player. So it's when it's not the statue unveiling; it's an actual player that is still playing, and it's Arturo Vidal. Now, look, this is him in Chile. He's a Chilean legend, 142 caps for Chile, played for Juventus, Bayern and Barcelona and Inter Milan. After 17 years, at the age of 36, back to his boyhood club in Chile, which are called Colo-Colo. So this is the arrival...
Not Coca-Cola.
No, it's not Coca-Cola. It's Colo-Colo.
Right.
So good they named it twice. Look, 36,000 people there. So he arrives in the helicopter. Is that enough for the unveiling? Oh, no, that is not enough. So he comes out, waves to the crowd. Everybody can't believe that Arturo is back after 17 years. So as if that's not enough, he comes out in his kit there. Then, straight after this, which I believe we have photographs, he then gets on a horse.
Wow.
It's all very regal.
It's fantastic. They put a cloak and a crown.
Oh, fantastic. It's like the Mask of Zorro or something.
And then he has a sword. Look at this. And he waves his sword around, and then he...
Even Eric Cantona didn't do that.
This is
extraordinary. Because Arthur... they're calling him King Arthur, and that's what he's doing. He's walking around with his sword and waving to everybody, and everybody's just come out to see him
That's how I'd
returned.
like to arrive at places generally.
OK.
I do arrive most places.
Yeah, I know. It's the same, just without the sword, though, isn't it?
See, I'm sorry, mate. I thought you were talking about a statue of this guy.
The unveiling. No, he's...
The real.
It's a real, proper unveiling. So he's been everywhere. You know, like I say, he's a legend. Played for Chile 142 times. Comes back to Chile after all these years... and then that's the way they welcome him back.
You've got to be relatively theatrical as well. Let's just see it again, Tom, the sort of stuff we're looking at there.
Yeah.
But you've got to be theatrical as well. It's not everybody. I mean, there are brilliant players like, like, say, Brian Robson, who are absolutely superb player. But you've got to have somebody with the theatrical side of it, like Cantona.
Of course.
Who would carry that off.
And that's the sort of player he was. I mean, he was a real... Oh, it probably still is a hard man.
Better deliver after that. I mean, imagine if he's rubbish.
I know, can you imagine? And then there's the horse. I know, I just feel sorry for the groundsman, because I know what groundsmen are like. If you even look at the pitch, they get upset about it. And if you're riding around on a great big horse...
And land a helicopter in the middle of it.
Look at that, the helicopter in there. That's
I'm actually surprised. I don't think that would be allowed in the UK, to land a helicopter in the middle of a pitch.
Maybe you just have to parachute out in the UK.
With 36,000 people.
I don't think that would be safe.
We think of
or the horse,
Leicester,
or the sword, or the cape and the crown, come to think of it. I don't think it would happen at all.
It's good to look at.
Yeah, it was nice.
As you were.
Bless you. Yeah, I'll make
Thank you very much, Paul Coyter. Thank you very much.
Stay with us, Norman Baker and Claire Pearsall. They don't have swords or horses, but they do have all the stories making the news. That's next.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
So the highway code was amended recently. Passed me by, but anyway, a new poll suggests this has made no difference to the safety of road users, and I could believe that.
Yeah, there was an awful crash in London, wasn't there? A bus and a pedestrian yesterday.
Fatality.
So we're asking, is the highway code fit for purpose, or should we just scrap it altogether? That's our debate this morning, and we're joined by Danny Kelly. She argues highways are not fit for purpose, and cycling instructor Anna Hughes thinks they are. Good morning to you both.
You see, Anna, I think it's a good thing. I think the highway code is a good thing. I just don't think that any of us pay any attention to it, or we should all be tested on it quite regularly, I would have thought. We should have revision courses in it.
Yeah, I think you just summed it up, Eamonn, by saying the changes passed you by. I actually asked a few of my fellow cyclists and pedestrians, what is classified as vulnerable road users, about this very thing. I said, has the new highway code made things safer for you? And most people said, not at all. Drivers don't know what it is. They don't know what the changes are. They probably don't know what the rules are to start with. And as you've just said, doing refreshers is a really good idea. It's a bit bizarre that we're given a license to operate this quite dangerous machinery, and then we're never tested again, and especially not on the highway code, which is, especially when it changes, why wouldn't we be retested on that or have to do refresher courses on it? You know, there are conflicts on the road, there are fatalities. It makes sense to be aware of what the highway code says, because it is there to keep us safe.
Yeah, Danny Kelly, when I think back, I think it was 1999 I passed my driving test. Hardly any bikes on the road then, to be honest, probably virtually none.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Hi, Rishi Sunak here. Join me for a special GB News People's Forum Live on Monday the 12th of February. I want to hear about the issues that matter to you. For your chance to be part of the audience and to put your questions to me, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com. See you there.
We've got Claire Purcell and we've got Norman Baker with the stories that are making the newspapers today. Norman, this Commons Accounts Committee is going to report today. They're not convinced they're getting value for money for the leg of HS2 that is going to go ahead. What have you got to say on all of this?
I was involved in this right at the beginning, in fact, when Andrew Dunas was the Transport Secretary, and then I looked, I was part of my brief actually to look with the Transport Secretary when I was in the Department for Transport at HS2. And I have to say that the idea is a great idea, and it's been catastrophically mishandled from start to finish. And we've now got the worst of all possible worlds, because the whole basis of a high-speed line needs to be long in order to make the time savings. And to cut it back from Birmingham to Old Oak Common is just a joke, frankly. And in fact, TfL, Transport for London, demonstrated that if you go from Birmingham to Old Oak Common and get on the train to Euston, it's going to be longer in time than going on the present train from Birmingham to Euston. And the scaled-back version here means that when trains get to Birmingham, they have to go on to the West Coast Main Line, which is already chock-a-block. And here's the irony of it. The trains they've ordered for HS2 are going to have to go slower than the existing rolling stock on the bit north of Birmingham. So the whole thing is a complete...
Why would they have to go slower?
Because of the nature of the design of the rolling stock. They can't handle the curbs. on the track. And part of this is down to caving into people on the HS2 who said they didn't want to see the line. People often 20 miles away, living away from the line, saying they didn't want HS2 there. So Patrick McLaughlin, bless him, was a good Transport Secretary, put a whole lot of stuff in cuttings and tunnels, which had driven up the cost enormously.
Now, I'm interested in you saying caving into people who wanted that. I would have thought you, if it benefited the environment, would have erred on the side of the tunnels.
Well, tunnels aren't free from environmental damage. I mean, there's a whole lot of consequences from building a tunnel, as a matter of fact. But no, I mean, I look at HS1. There was a huge controversy over HS1 through Kent originally, saying it's going to damage our houses and all that sort of stuff, and we couldn't bear the noise. I mean, Claire's in Kent, so she may have a different view, but I don't hear any complaints from people in Kent about HS1. In fact, it seems to be quite good.
Well, let's go to a person in Kent and see if there are any complaints about HS1.
Yes, there are. It doesn't serve where it needs to serve.
That's true, I agree with that.
It looks after one part, so it goes from Dover all the way up through into Stratford International and into St Pancras. But it doesn't serve central London. It doesn't. Most of the commuter routes are not on that side of the county, and it's also much more expensive. The original route of HS1 went much more over to nearer to where I live, in fact, and it took out houses in Dartford, Sutton-at-Hone, and other small villages. People had their houses compulsory purchased, and they were left empty for a number of years before it was all scrapped. So you've got part of an infrastructure there, and then those houses that were bought up were then put back on the market, and everybody was meant to forget about it.
It's one of these topics I almost can't bear to talk about because it makes me so irritated. And half of me thinks it's fantastic that Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt pulled the plug and said that we've spent enough money on this, is ridiculous. And the other half of me thinks, for goodness sake, we've come this far, we might as well finish it off.
But there's a problem with infrastructure planning in this country, and you look at the Lower Thames crossing, which is near to the Dartford, the existing Dartford crossing. 10 years. Where have we got? Absolutely nowhere, apart from a great big wad of documents.
See, I don't believe HS2 had anything other than it was simply about saving money prior to an election and let the government look as if they were giving money out to other projects.
You're going to end up with HS2 trains, not just running slower, but occupying the West Coast Main Line north of Birmingham, which is really chock-a-block, by the way. The whole thing is about capacity in the first place.
Yes.
And they're going to have to. That means some of the existing trains will have to come off. So if you live in somewhere between Birmingham and London, like Rugby or something, you're going to end up with a worse train service going forward because they have to take trains off the line.
Isabel, are you like? I'm not a great train user. It's not to say I wouldn't be. I would love to be for various reasons. But where we live, west of London,
I used to train all the time, whizzing into London, and my brother's in Scotland, whiz up to him to see him in Scotland. I'm using the train.
Yes, but you have to whiz into London to then go up to Scotland.
Yeah, well, that's annoying.
My point is, does it not frustrate you the way it frustrates me that I can't get to Manchester or Birmingham or Scotland or whatever from my side of the town without travelling into Euston or...
You can actually get cross-country trains, to be fair, which don't go via London, but they are slower, but they do operate. You can get a train from, say, Penzance to Aberdeen. It goes nowhere near London.
Norman, you would be great on one of those Michael Portillo-type programmes. You really would be, because you've got the knowledge, you've got the love, you've got the enthusiasm, and if you weren't doing that, you'd be a great mate to travel about the country or where we're going today.
I'm going to France for a rail trip next month. But what I did before Christmas was to demonstrate that the railway works. I went from Newhaven on the south coast to Thurso on the north coast of Scotland in a day by rail. And I left on time and arrived on time.
Well, my friend, what is it that, when it works, that you love? And because you obviously do love rail travel.
Well, look, I mean, I think it's just a very civilised way of travelling. You can talk to people on the train, you can wander up and down, you can get a coffee or something like that. You know, on a car you can stop and get out at a service station. On a train you can wander around. On a boat you can wander around. In a plane you're under house arrest, basically, and the seatbelt's on.
That's a good way of putting it.
Let's talk about Donald Trump, shall we? He wants presidential immunity when it comes to some of these court cases he's facing. He's been denied that so far. It's going to head to the Supreme Court. We know that there's a bias in the Supreme Court in favour of Conservatives. What does this mean for a possible future Donald Trump panel?
Well, I think this has really cut the the wings off him at the moment. He's got until the 12th of February to file an appeal, so it's not definite that it's going to the Supreme Court. He apparently...
You guarantee he's going to appeal
He
this,
respectfully disagrees with the
how many
district
court
judges.
cases is this man involved in?
91, I think he is at the moment.
Yeah, and he isn't going to get immunity from it. But what's quite interesting when you look at the polling, every single time he appears in court or there's another court case go against him, his popularity increases.
Yes.
So this is doing him no harm whatsoever.
Let's talk about knowledge increasing, Claire. The transfer of knowledge. This is a very interesting article that you've found in the Mirror today. Now, when we talk about transfer of knowledge, you mean generations, younger and older, teaching each other something.
Yeah, I think this is actually quite a nice story because we all have a go at the younger generation for always being on devices, as you've had conversations this morning about online safety. But younger people have taught their older relatives things like how to use a tablet, how to use emojis in a message, and how to use WhatsApp or scan a QR code. Now, these are sort of relatively basic things, but you do sometimes need them explained, and they're quite happy in return to be taught things which I think are just basic, like identifying plants and flowers or birds. But there are some more useful things. The older generation can teach you how to act in a job interview. Now, I know that I've had that conversation with my son, who is growing up. He's a teenager.
But if he listens to you, that is.
I think he'll listen to maybe one word in every 100, but at his school, they're looking at CV writing and how to present yourself. So hopefully, all of it together will he become a rounded individual.
I'm really interested in the older generation teaching kids about leaves and what else was that?
Birds,
whatever.
plants.
I learned all of that at school.
I learnt all that from family, and I love that. If we're out and about, I can ask my parents any
what's
or
that
plant,
tree?
and they'll know. And I haven't
that plant?
retained it. I can't retain it. It's like I can watch the weather forecast every morning and tell you what the weather is, and I can't absorb that information. But I have to say on this story, one of my favourite things in the world is when my mum misuses an emoji, and we have a family WhatsApp group, and my brother and I die when she accidentally sends one of these when she wants thumbs up.
Exactly.
So I don't think we should teach our parents exactly how to use WhatsApp because it's one of life's great joys.
David Cameron famously sent LOL, didn't he?
Yeah,
to someone,
lol.
thinking it meant lots of love rather than laugh out loud.
Oh, well, does it not mean lots of love?
No, it doesn't. It means laugh out loud, Eamonn. Have you sent it to lots of people?
I think I probably have. I probably have.
Lol.
David Lammy is in India. He's there for talks in geopolitics, and he ends up being asked about Rolex watch thefts in London. Tell us more.
This is. I thought I found an amusing story in the Financial Times for a change. This is on the front page of the Financial Times. Yes, and he's over there, and he's talking about business links and everything else, and immigration and other matters that are of importance to India. But what the Indians who he's been meeting want to talk about are the theft of Rolex watches in Mayfair, because they're saying that there's a crime wave and they're losing all their watches. And the figures do suggest, in fact, there is a problem in terms of the number of crimes in London against a person. London's been hit by a wave of street crime, it says in the FT. Last year, the number of thefts from a person, including stealing watches, handbags and mobile phones, went up 27% to 72,000, according to police data, which is a huge number of crimes, don't you think so?
Terrible.
Must be nobody else in Mayfair apart from theft.
You wear a watch?
No, I don't wear a watch because
No, I've got out of the habit of wearing one as well. Do you wear one?
No, I don't. So
I
use
feel
my phone.
naked if I don't wear one, but mine's not worth nicking in case anyone's thinking about it.
But what yours is larger. It's not the traditional female
No, I like a
form.
chunky watch.
And I think most people are now going for chunkier watches, bigger watches, whether you're men or women.
Yeah, I use my phone. That tells me the time, it tells me the date.
Yeah, but then you have to take your phone to the loo or whatever. You know, I run to the loo quickly. Oh, how long have I got?
Yeah, I think my phone just goes everywhere, so I think that says a lot more about me than anything else.
Not go there.
Just a quick...
I don't have to tie a watch because I don't have time on my hands.
Quick word about, we've got a minute or so, just a quick word about, we've got 1:40 of Prince Charles and the Harry meeting yesterday. Norman, what did you make of it and the brevity of it?
I think to some extent it's it's their own business, and it's not for us to pry into family affairs, is part of my reaction. But, I mean, he flew all the way from Los Angeles, and he clearly didn't have to do that. There was a huge commitment in time. I don't know who's paying for the flights, by the way, but there's another issue there. Might be us. But ultimately, if you're 30 minutes or 45 minutes, that's a matter presumably determined by Charles, not by Harry.
Yeah, I agree with you, yeah. Claire?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel a little bit sympathy. Maybe the King is receiving some treatment where he doesn't feel up to seeing anybody for longer than half an hour. I think we're all so concerned at how long he has or hasn't spoken to his son, when there could actually be a reason for it.
I don't even think it's about how long they spoke or the meeting was. I think it is just the optics of seeing Harry drive in and then the King whizzing out, within an hour. It looks as if as soon as his son's arrived, he can't wait to get out of there. It might be perfectly normal for them to have a brief meeting. It might be the right thing to do health-wise. But the optics, and we know that the royals really think about this. Nothing happens by accident. They clearly didn't mind. Well, maybe looked like they weren't fussed to see him.
Maybe there is another meeting planned. Maybe there is. Let's not do them down.
I can only imagine it was about the helicopter flying in the dark. And helicopter pilots don't like to do that.
Well, I suspect he was already planning to go back on the Tuesday, and that he was delaying his flight in order to see him.
Yes, that rings true.
OK. Claire and Norman, really, as always, lovely to talk to you. Thank you both very much indeed. Here's the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. It's a chilly start out there for many of us, but plenty of bright weather for the rest of today, although cloud and rain will linger across the far south. That will come and go, especially across parts of Devon and Cornwall through the day. It's going to be on and off rainfall. The cloud also extends up to around the M4, but north of that, actually plenty of bright spells, some patchy cloud around, and continued sleet and snow showers for the north and west of Scotland. One of the two of these getting into parts of Northern Ireland as well, but actually away from these showers, feeling perfectly pleasant with temperatures of 7 to 8 Celsius across central parts and light winds, although it will stay windy in the far north and northwest. That wind will continue to drive snow showers into northwest Scotland overnight. Meanwhile, the next bout of wet weather returns to the south and southwest. This will be falling as heavy and persistent rain for parts of South Wales and southwest England by dawn. Mild here, but cold further north, with temperatures well below freezing for parts of Scotland and northern England. And as the rain in the south moves north and bumps into the cold air, well, it's going to turn increasingly to snow, mainly across mid Wales, the Midlands northwards. Increasingly, that's going to affect northern England and Northern Ireland later in the day as well. But it's certainly going to be a wintry day with that snow building up, and some significant snowfall over northern hills could cause disruption.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Ken, do you find the Union flag, the Union Jack, divisive?
In some situation, but as Simon quite clearly stated, and I agree with everything that he says in regards that there's situation when people use it for ulterior motive to cause fear, alarm and distress. We saw that with the far right when they came up to saying protecting the Churchill statues and things of that nature. But largely on the large whole, even I wave the St. George's flag on a sporting occasion. And I don't see anything wrong in raising the Union Jack or the St. George's flag so long as the intention is correct. And as he says, Mr. Brockhurst, he served for the country, and he should have every right to be proud of what he's done and the way that he wants to display it.
All right, Simon, what do you make of this kind of, I would argue it as like student social media-based politics, where you get these pillocks from the Green Party or whatever saying, oh, it's divisive and I can't believe it. It will be legal in this country to do... Do those people need to get out more? I was on the streets of Stratford earlier on, an incredibly diverse place, speaking to a massive range of people right across different age demographics. I couldn't find a single sausage who said to me that they thought that this guy from the Green Party was right.
He obviously has absolutely no attention from anybody, and this is his way of finding attention. Both Ken and myself, we both agree that nobody should use any symbol of national identity to offend others deliberately, because that's just inflaming a situation. There's so much sensitivity around so many things today, and people do get offended by so much so quickly without any rhyme or reason.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 7th of February. You're very welcome.
You're both very welcome on board. Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster here. This is Breakfast on GB News on a Wednesday.
It was a swift exit for the King after a 45-minute with Prince Harry. So is a royal reconciliation still possible?
The King reportedly delayed his helicopter flight so he could spend time with his youngest son. Meanwhile, Prince William has no plans to meet his brother, Prince Harry, while he's in the UK. So was the 11-hour flight worth it for Prince Harry? Find out shortly.
Is the government's biggest white elephant, HS2, set to haunt the Prime Minister again today?
Has Rishi Sunak managed to achieve the worst of both worlds with his HS2 compromise? Well, the Public Accounts Committee seemed to think so. Brace yourselves for a punishing PMQs.
A chilly but bright day for many of us today before some significant snow across the central third of the UK. Tomorrow, more details in the weather forecast coming up soon.
HS2 drawing a lot of comments from you today. Bernard says, what happened to the need to travel for business due to the digital revolution? HS2's never been for the benefit of the public. It's always been a means to bleed money from government for the benefit of large construction companies and Conservative supporters.
Lots of you talking about dentistry. Linda says bad teeth in primary-age children is a safeguarding concern. Instead of wasting money sending in teams of dental workers to help teach children to clean their teeth, name and shame the parents.
Correct.
And put them on the safeguarding list. It's neglect.
It is neglect. I mean, absolutely disgraceful to hear from the Health Secretary today that kids go to school, and she said, and when they get to school, we'll teach them how to clean their teeth. To actually think that kids go to school and they don't know how to basically brush their teeth, oral hygiene.
When I go to the hygienist, she, teaches me how I should brush my teeth. So maybe we all need re-educating.
But that's an advanced level that she's talking to you about. I mean, we all do the basic. It's like saying they don't clean their bottoms going to school. And a lot of them don't, it appears, as well. A lot of them aren't even toilet trained. So sometimes you just think,
What's wrong with the world?
Yeah, we blame the government on so many things. Sometimes have a closer look to home.
Yeah, well, there wouldn't be a bad idea to have a few more NHS dentists available. Just saying. Right, let's talk about the prodigal return of Prince Harry. Was he given short shrift by His Majesty the King in the wake of the devastating cancer diagnosis that we've learnt of this week?
Reports today over the papers, they vary from 30 minutes to 45 minutes as to the length of the meeting. That was at Clarence House in London yesterday before the King and Queen departed in that helicopter you just saw there to Sandringham.
Let's speak to Cameron Walker, who's been right across the story from the very start for us. He joins us from Buckingham Palace. That's where the helicopter took off from yesterday. And you're telling us this morning, Cameron, that actually the King delayed his plans and held off a scheduled flight in order to make time to see his son.
Yes, Isabel, according to the Sun newspaper this morning, the King did actually delay his helicopter flight from Sandringham in order to make time to see his son. It seems he was perhaps a bit touched by the gesture that Prince Harry decided to make the 11-hour journey across the Atlantic to see his father, having learned of his cancer diagnosis. So Prince Harry landed at around lunchtime yesterday, was whisked off to the VIP Windsor suite at Heathrow Airport, where a black SUV, accompanied by 2 police cars and another black SUV, drove into central London. He arrived at Clarence House at 2:42 p.m. and he was in the building for around 45 minutes. And as you said, a number of papers are reporting that the meeting itself between the King and his youngest son lasted around half an hour before Prince Harry made a swift exit, and then the King and the Queen drove very publicly from Clarence House to Buckingham Palace to then take off in a helicopter towards Sandringham for him to recuperate after his cancer treatment. Now, on the one hand, you could ask, well, why is it that you'd fly all the way over to the UK for only a half-an-hour meeting with your father who's got cancer? But as Robert Hardman was alluding to in the last hour, it's actually a royal family slightly different to us, where the King, clearly as head of state, has a very, very packed schedule, even though he is suffering from cancer at the moment. And presumably, his schedule was so packed that a half-an-hour meeting is actually perfectly normal to spend time with a member of your closest family. But as you said, Isabel, in the openers there, it's the optics which don't look great here. The fact that it was such a short meeting and Prince Harry left Clarence House, and then the King and the Queen escaped via helicopter from the Buckingham Palace garden to Sandringham. And meanwhile, Prince William, I'm told, has absolutely no plans to meet his brother either. So was that half-an-hour flight worth it for Prince Harry? It seems an awful long way to go for a half-an-hour meeting.
Cameron, you just said that Harry was escorted into London by 2 police cars. I thought there was a whole row about royal protection, that he wasn't entitled to it. And if so, why would he have received it yesterday?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Eamonn. Prince Harry's currently suing the Home Office over their decision not to provide him with the same degree of police protection while he's in the UK. That was a decision taken after he left the royal family. So at the moment, Prince Harry has to give the Home Office, I think it's 28 days notice if he is returning to the UK for an official reason, in order for them to plan to provide him with police protection. Because although he's no longer a working member of the royal family, clearly he is still a VIP in the terms of he'll need security, because he is still the youngest son of the monarch and 5th in line to the throne. We don't know exactly why he was provided with police protection yesterday. I suspect it was not 28 days notice, but then again, he's flying over because his father's been diagnosed with cancer, so perhaps the Home Office made an exception.
OK, got to leave it there. Cameron, thank you very much indeed. The time is 6 minutes past 9. HS2 set to haunt the Prime Minister again today as he faces Prime Minister's questions. A new report from the Commons Public Accounts Committee has revealed building HS2 between London and Birmingham, but not extending it to Manchester, is poor value for money.
Well, let's get our political correspondent's take on all of this. Olivia Utley, good morning to you. Olivia, has it possibly been the case that Rishi Sunak has ended up with the worst of both worlds on HS2?
Good morning, Isabel. Well, that does seem to be the writing between the lines from this report from the Public Accounts Committee. The Public Accounts Committee is a group of MPs from all parties across the House. And as Eamonn said there, they have concluded that the new HS2, the tweaked HS2 that Rishi Sunak announced in October, they believe will be very poor value for money. Now, in October, just before the Conservative Party conference, Rishi Sunak very controversially announced that the leg of HS2 from Manchester to Birmingham was to be scrapped, leaving only the leg between Birmingham and London. Now, on top of that, he also said that there was a bit of a question mark over the London part of the network. If no private investment was to be made, then he said that the line would have to stop at Old Oak Common in the far west of London. Now, the Public Accounts Committee have rubbed salt into the wound, if you like, by saying not only that this version of HS2 is a poor use of money, but also they are sceptical that there will be enough private investment to get that Old Oak Common to Euston leg of the line up and running. HS2 has haunted Rishi Sunak. He thought last October that it was time to sort of lance the boil and to show the public that he was prepared to be realistic about this project, and that's why he stood up and made that very controversial decision to scrap that Manchester to Birmingham leg. Now it feels as though that decision is coming back to bite him, and I think we can expect to hear quite a lot about this from Keir Starmer in PMQs later today.
And I think we'll hear quite a lot about this with Andrew and Beverly from 9:30 this morning. Guys, good to see you.
Good morning. We want to know what you think about Manchester United Stadium being rebuilt, possibly with public money, Eamonn. We were just thinking.
I just don't know how they get the public money bit for it.
It would be an outrage. There would be a protest with pitchforks.
Yes.
because Jim Ratcliffe, who's a billionaire, who, by the way, is a tax exile, who's bought into Man U, wants the taxpayer to fund the rebuilding. Pay for it yourself, mate. Or flog a player. Or pay him less.
No argument.
Yeah. Man U fan over there, of course.
Yeah, of course. And what about Prince Harry? I think if you're a father and your son travels through the night to come and see
10.5-hour flight.
more than 45 minutes.
Can you see him? Can you go now, please?
It's very telling, isn't it?
It's not like he had a helicopter slot to get. Exactly. You catch your helicopter from the grounds at Buckingham Palace. He could have gone any time.
Yeah, he could have gone the next day.
Yeah.
Isabel said a scheduled flight. You were saying earlier on. I'm thinking, but it wasn't a scheduled flight. It's a private flight.
From the garden of Buckingham Palace.
Yeah.
I've been in that helicopter and I've landed in that. It's a huge garden. It's a helicopter pad.
It's not like getting an easy jet at 3:10 or something.
The fact is, the king doesn't trust his son.
And also, bear in mind, it's not
because he monetises everything.
It's not that long ago, of course, that the Omid Scobie translation, was it into Portuguese or whatever that version was?
Dutch.
Thank you. Named King Charles as the royal who questioned the skin colour of their future baby.
And the Princess of Wales.
So, you know, that must still be smarting for King Charles.
And that's not even counting what was said about the Queen.
Yeah.
And I wonder, was she at the meeting yesterday? The only thing I'm going to say to both of you is surely this just gives more ammunition, more snowballs to fire in any future books and revelations.
Of course, because it casts them as the victim. It's almost like everything that Meghan and Harry do. The outcome will be that they are the hard-done-by party, because now he can say, I went all across the world and my father only saw me for 40 minutes.
Not even that. I mean, the Times says it was half an hour, because it's not like knocking on a little suburban semi-door. You have to wait for the lackey, and you'd be shown to a waiting room. I mean, it's not like us ordinary folk.
Come in, I've got the kettle on.
It wasn't like when my mum was out, she'd open the door and the kettle would be on in 30 seconds.
But it's not like a normal family. They do have, you know, there is a coldness that we can't understand. And, you know, maybe we're reading too much into it. I'm hoping that maybe he's learnt the error of his ways. He's not going to monetise it, and there might be a reconciliation. But then again, pigs might fly.
But not with his brother. Right?
You know, I know you say they're not like ordinary people, and they're obviously not like ordinary people. I'm an ordinary person, you're all ordinary people. I would not have done it this way. I don't care what the circumstances would have been. I would say, cancel that helicopter, 100%. Keep the engine running. 100%. For another 2 hours, I'll be out there. Or come with his son to Sandringham, and we'll fly you back tomorrow.
But Harry enjoys the kind of conversations that the king detests, doesn't he? Which is that emotional psychoanalysis that Harry does. And King Charles was like, I don't do that kind of communication. They've both got completely different communication styles. He'll just want to be in and out.
Do you think the suitcases were packed outside the door when Harry arrived, just to sort of...
But, Andrew, another thing... He doesn't get police protection in the UK, right?
Except
he did.
He did
that
yesterday.
was interesting. That was
police
really
cars.
And that would have cost a lot of money for the taxpayer.
Yeah.
He's been earning a lot of money over there, slagging off the Royal Institution. He should have paid for it himself, in my view.
Yeah.
It's the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it?
It is. It's going to keep us talking. We're also talking about dentistry. When did you last see an NHS dentist?
They don't exist, really, do they? No,
yeah, primary school.
20 years ago, at least for me.
Yeah, and also, the Nottingham killer, of course, this story of Kalkane, who is in hospital as opposed to prison, if you remember, because of his mental health diagnosis. Well, he's claiming benefits. Whilst in hospital.
Potentially you can claim £380 a month.
Why?
What an outrage.
Sort that out. Right, we look forward to seeing you 9:30. Thanks very much indeed. Right, who fancies...
They always got so many interesting things to talk about.
To be fair, we did talk about that.
Well, we didn't talk about it enough.
Yeah, I
just sort of sit and think, why haven't we talked about that? Why haven't we done that? Anyway, they haven't got the Great British Giveaway, have you?
We don't.
No, good, but we do, and here it is.
We want to turn 2024 into 2020 more with your chance to win £18,000 in cash to spend however you like. You really could be the next big winner of our Great British Giveaway. Phil from West Yorkshire won our last one.
I never won a penny in my life.
Well, congratulations, you've won £10,000.
Oh my God, wow.
For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 23rd of February. Good luck.
Oh, as well, as if that wasn't good enough, we are the station that keeps on giving.
Goodies
Next February, February the 12th. Put it in your diary, note it, 8 p.m, GB News. Why is that, Isabel?
Well, we will be hosting a very special People's Forum. You're familiar with those as an idea, but this one will have the Prime Minister, and there are going to be live Q&As. And where are those questions coming from, Eamonn?
They come from you, right? Questions and answers. You give the questions, he'll try and dodge them. But anyway, do your best. Here's how you can get involved.
Hi, Rishi Sunak here. Join me for a special GB News People's Forum Live on Monday the 12th of February. I want to hear about the issues that matter to you. For your chance to be part of the audience and to put your questions to me, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com. See you there.
And this is how you register your interest. gbnews.com/PM. Make sure you've got a killer question. You don't get an opportunity like this every day to put questions to the man in charge.
And Tucker Carlson's doing the same thing, the former Fox News host.
He won't get any straight answers.
Now out in his own, he's interviewing Vladimir Putin. Jack says Tucker Carlson's a smart cookie, and I'm sure he won't give Putin a free ride when we get the interview later today. Weller says he will get more truth than news media, including you. OK, fair enough. Kim says Tucker is right to want to hear directly from Putin and ask direct questions on why Russia invaded Ukraine. All we get is propaganda, in my opinion. Well, it'll certainly be, worth watching, but I don't expect...
He doesn't like being challenged, so that won't go down well. No. And he also doesn't like sticking to the truth. A lot of Russians have no idea the situation that are going on, so the idea that he's going to announce any of it to an American broadcaster is for the birds.
Well, for a Russian broadcaster, he wouldn't show it in Russia, would he, the TV interview?
I don't know now.
That's what we would think. Anyway, we're going to continue to talk about Prince Harry and the King and the relationship they have and where does Meghan fit into it all, and indeed the Queen Camilla right after this.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
So the highway code was amended recently. passed me by. But anyway, a new poll suggests this has made no difference to the safety of road users, and I could believe that.
Yeah, there was an awful crash in London, wasn't there? A bus and a pedestrian yesterday.
Fatality.
So we're asking, is the highway code fit for purpose, or should we just scrap it altogether? That's our debate this morning, and we're joined by Danny Kelly. She argues highways are not fit for purpose, and cycling instructor Anna Hughes thinks they are. Good morning to you both.
You see, Anna, I think it's a good thing. I think the highway code is a good thing. I just don't think that any of us pay any attention to it, or we should all be tested on it quite regularly, I would have thought. We should have revision courses in it.
Yeah, I think you just summed it up, Eamonn, by saying the changes passed you by. I actually asked a few of my fellow cyclists and pedestrians, what is classified as vulnerable road users, about this very thing. I said, has the new highway code made things safer for you? And most people said, not at all. Drivers don't know what it is. They don't know what the changes are. They probably don't know what the rules are to start with. And as you've just said, doing refreshers is a really good idea. It's a bit bizarre that we're given a license to operate this quite dangerous machinery, and then we're never tested again, and especially not on the highway code, which is, especially when it changes, why wouldn't we be retested on that or have to do refresher courses on it? You know, there are conflicts on the road, there are fatalities. It makes sense to be aware of what the highway code says, because it is there to keep us safe.
Yeah, Danny Kelly, when I think back, I think it was 1999 I passed my driving test. Hardly any bikes on the road then, to be honest, probably virtually none.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel. Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the studio now, we've got Sarah Robertson. Sarah's a royal and entertainment reporter for the Sunday Mirror, and we're all talking about Prince Harry and the King in this meeting yesterday. And then the main point of concern for most people, Sarah, is why would it have been so short?
It would have been so short because it was a flying visit, and the King is now undergoing treatment for cancer. So he started his treatment yesterday. He was very, very tired. And these things as well are planned in advance, and Harry just made this spontaneous visit, really, with not much preparation. So the King couldn't really give him very much time at all. He has to stick to a strict schedule. He's got staff working for him. Harry's coming in for a team. Harry was also a little bit late in as well from the airport, so it also cut Charles's time with him. And Charles is a stickler for timekeeping.
Well, Sarah,
if you're late, that's it.
Don't forget that his son is still estranged, effectively. I mean, he's insulted his wife.
That's right.
He's, through Omid Scobie, not denied that the King was allegedly a racist in some way. Can he trust his son? Surely he just wanted a short meeting, because any longer time was a risk.
Well, this was obviously the first meeting that the two men had, and I was told it was emotional, but it was strained as well in parts. And Charles was obviously pleased, delighted that Harry had made the effort to come. But there's a long way to go until we see the closeness between them. But Charles does love his son. He's like any parent, you know. Parents love their children no matter what they push them through. Blood is thicker than water. So I think there will be a truce of sorts, but Charles is still listening, you know, thinking, can I fully trust him yet?
But credit to Harry, the fact that he did make the trip.
And that's what I was so delighted to see, that Harry realised what's important at times like this. And when someone's going through cancer and this sort of crisis, it brings families together, doesn't it? As I said, blood's thicker than water. And if you're going through cancer treatment, anyone watching who've had a parent or a friend or family with cancer, your family and friends is what you need around you at a time like this. So Harry's realised he needs to be with his dad. And he's also a very, very sensitive boy underneath everything. And I know he's pushed his father to the limits and his brother as well, but I think deep down he's quite lost. And the thought of something happening to his darling Popper
is...
The trauma of losing a mum.
Exactly.
If your remaining parent is suddenly ill, it's scary. But why didn't he bring his kids then, the grandchildren? That would have been lovely for the king to see little Lilibet. He's barely had 5 minutes with her in her entire life. You know that Charles loves children. He loves George and Charlotte and Louis so much.
Yes.
That would have been lovely, wouldn't it?
Agreed, Isabella. It would have been. It really would. But in this instance, again, it comes down to practicalities and being able to get on a plane, 2 young children on board
they've
as
got
well.
nannies, they can manage.
I think on this one, Meghan felt in this instance Harry needed that time with his father alone, and I actually agreed with her there.
He certainly didn't need mummy there. You know.
Is that what you're calling Meghan these days? She's the gatekeeper, though, isn't she, Eamonn?
The gatekeeper.
She's the puppet master. She controls the strings.
Right.
She also knows the family silver. You know, it's a case of protecting it. Get over there, Harry, and see your dad.
What about William? So we've got, you know, a rapprochement with the father. Great, it's good to see. The brothers still separated, but also brother's wife unwell and going through a lot of recuperation as well.
Yeah.
Do you think there'll be enough there to make him stretch out his hand?
I've been told that Harry was really desperate to have a reunion with William, and the door is open for Harry to do that. He's realised now the error of his ways, and obviously with his father being ill, I think he wants his brother back in his life. But William is not as forgiving, shall we say. Right. He doesn't let things go as easy, and there's a lot of work to be done there. And William's
I could see Harry back in the royal fold. I could see him. I can't see any role for Meghan at all, although they would probably have to make something for her.
That's if the...
But Harry, I could see him doing something on a reduced, limited, auxiliary sort of role. What do you think?
It could be possible that maybe Charles may speak to him in the future about something with the Commonwealth, which is what him and Meghan were meant to be doing originally.
True.
And we saw that they were very well received when they did that impromptu tour to Jamaica. So there could be a way back in that way, but nothing permanent.
Sarah Robertson, thank you for your time this morning. Really appreciate it. If only people could see the bottom half of you.
Don't say that. You'll give them all ideas, Eamonn.
All good. Have a lovely day. Breakfast back from 6 o'clock. Up next, the wonderful Andrew and Bev.
Be good.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. It's a chilly start out there for many of us, but plenty of bright weather for the rest of today, although cloud and rain will linger across the far south. That will come and go, especially across parts of Devon and Cornwall through the day. It's going to be on and off rainfall. The cloud also extends up to around the M4, but north of that, actually plenty of bright spells, some patchy cloud around, and continued sleet and snow showers for the north and west of Scotland. One of the two of these getting into parts of Northern Ireland as well, but actually away from these showers, feeling perfectly pleasant with temperatures of 7 to 8 Celsius across central parts and light winds, although it will stay windy in the far north and northwest. That wind will continue to drive snow showers into northwest Scotland overnight. Meanwhile, the next bout of wet weather returns to the south and southwest. This will be falling as heavy and persistent rain for parts of South Wales and southwest England by dawn. Mild here, but cold further north, with temperatures well below freezing for parts of Scotland and northern England. And as the rain in the south moves north and bumps into the cold air, well, it's going to turn increasingly to snow, mainly across mid-Wales, the Midlands northwards. Increasingly, that's going to affect northern England and Northern Ireland later in the day as well. But it's certainly going to be a wintry day with that snow building up, and some significant snowfall over northern hills could cause disruption.
Good morning. We're preparing for a very busy show here at GB News.
Harry, 30 minutes, took him 10.5 hours to get there on the plane. Was it really worth it? They just don't trust him, do they?
Absolutely. The Nottingham killer, he's claiming benefits whilst being in that psychiatric hospital. Are you all right with that?
Certainly not.
And what else are we talking about?
Manchester United, the most famous, iconic stadium in the world, and the owner, who's a billionaire, says we, the taxpayer, should help rebuild it. No.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from